Who put that first?
Appreciate your patience. We're waiting on one of the board members to get here. You already waited a week. plus 10 minutes.
I smoke everywhere.
While we wait for the last board member to show up, I just want to remind everyone, please, when you come up to the podium, introduce yourself, sign in, and please remember to speak into the microphone. We use the recordings for the minutes so that we can make sure we have an accurate record of the proceedings here today. I do have two more board members who had previously confirmed that they're going to be here. So I believe that they're still in traffic or going to be here shortly. We'll just wait it out just a couple more minutes, please.
All right, we can get rolling. Matt just walked here from Florence. All right, we got a quorum, so we'll call to order the June 23rd Somerville DRB meeting. First on the agenda would be to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Make a motion for approval.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion carries. Minutes are approved. We do have a request that because of some time constraints, that three of these projects be put together you want to do them first?
Yeah, they just asked if they could be, if we could amend the agenda and have these three items heard first. So it'd be number 4 under old business, the Old Dairy Road Single Family Townhomes and Amenity Center. Number 1 under new business, the Broadstone North Maple Street proposed 432 unit apartment development. And number 2 under new business, Alta North Maple Street proposed 338 apartment development. So we would just need a motion to amend the agenda.
Make a motion.
We got a motion, a second. All right. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? All right. Well, as we appreciate everybody's flexibility, we're going to continue to appreciate everybody's flexibility. So we're going to put move Old Dairy Road number 4 on old business to first as the first presentation. You just sign in, state your name and your role in the project, and as we do that, do we have any staff comments?
Yeah, just 1 second. All right, so this is a request for preliminary approval of a proposed new single-family townhome development with an amenity center. The property is zoned PUD, planned unit development. The property is located west of Old Dairy Road on the Salisbury parcel. Based on the review, following our staff's comments, the site conceptually meets requirements. Plats will be approved before permitting. Street trees are provided on both sides of the streets and meet the required planting requirements. Street trees should be planted so as not to interfere with the proposed street lighting and should maintain a minimum distance of 15 feet. The board only has to review the amenity center and the townhome facades. The exterior finishes include a mix of materials, including both horizontal and vertical siding materials, shingle roofs, and a brick base to the amenity center. Depth of the front porches is 6 feet on the one provided detail. A detailed elevation of the amenity center has not been provided, and details of the proposed poolside pergolas have not been provided. Detail of the mail kiosk has not been provided, and an entrance sign is proposed. The location meets requirements, but no design has been submitted. So this is the tract where the development will occur. Plat, let's get to a site plan. So at this time, I can turn it over to the applicant.
Hi, my name is Keith Postal. I'm the Director of Land Acquisition for American Homes for Rent. American Homes for Rent is one of the largest build for rent companies in the country. We're in 22 states, approximately 60,000 properties we lease. We are typically a long-term owner of all of our properties. In this particular community, it would be upwards to 15 years that we would own this property. So this is not something we're going to sell off. We strive to be good neighbors, and we try to work very well and partner with our municipalities where we can, and we've had a lot of success doing that. Our portion of the Salisbury Farm community is approximately 360 lots in its entirety, with 124 of those being townhome lots, which we'll be speaking about later. It will be a heavily amenitized community, which you'll see when the rest of the presentation is made. There'll be a clubhouse, a resort style pool. There are parks, walking trails throughout the community. And one thing we do as the owner is we maintain all the common space, including the entry monuments, parks, walking trails. They're all ours to maintain. We maintain all the homes as well as all the individual homes' yards. We do the lawn maintenance for everything. So if y'all don't have any questions of me, I will let this move on to Aaron Schmidt with Seaman Whiteside.
I'm good. Let's look at it.
Yep, we'll just keep going. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So as you said, Aaron Schmidt, I'm a project manager at Single Whiteside here in our Somerville office. The civil engineers on the project, when we came before you for conceptual review and feedback, the site plan that you have in front of you hasn't changed dramatically since then, especially around where the 124 townhomes are. Really from preliminary to, or from conceptual to preliminary, we focused on one of the biggest comments you had as far as townhomes. So in this layout, townhomes are 3, 4, 5, and 6. There's nothing above 6 as far as a stick of townhomes together. We also kind of tried to put 4s next to 5s or 5s and 6 and break it up so that you don't just have 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, and down the road it goes. So we tried to be pretty mindful of that. Along with that, we also then paid attention to the roads and how these sections would be laid out in this property. With that, we've actually worked with the town, talked with Jesse, and we've talked with Bonnie about putting in a multi-use trail. That way it'll, instead of a 5-foot sidewalk, we're bumping it up wider and something that can be used throughout the community, throughout the townhomes, interconnect the open spaces, and it is more of a well-used travel way rather than kicking people off the sidewalk with a bike. With that said, we also looked further into the interconnectivity. So we've coordinated more with the property owners or potential property owners to the south in order to make it a very clean connection. We've also been in tune with the town as far as how that connection works, what the right of way looks like, so that there will be a connection to North Maple along with a connection to Old Berry Road. Now that connection to North Maple will be on the developer to the south, but we are in the coordination with that and making sure that's at the forefront of our minds. With that, we also then kind of took a deeper dive into the open spaces. And although it's not shown for preliminary as in depth as we've gotten to this point, just because we've been kind of put off a couple of times from our own being, and we've looked at docks and overlooks for the ponds. We really want the 2 existing ponds that you see on the northern part of the property to be a focal point for the property. That is also where the mail kiosk will go. There's parallel parking that's going to be included there as well, ADA accessibility. And that's kind of a focal point of what we want the community to be built around. And as you can see, the townhomes are basically right there as well. And so we want to create some pretty beautiful views through plantings, through structures, through trail systems and stuff like that in order to kind of make this a beautiful piece of the property. With that said, that's kind of the largest pieces that we have continued to kind of work on and create for this preliminary meeting. With that, I will go ahead and ask Tim if he could we've put together a flyover for you just so that you can see portions of the property rendered. If you could, that would be great. We'll fly through that real quick, and then Travis will then touch on the rest of this stuff. I was actually just getting ready to say that. If you want me to sing, I can. I'd rather not get denied approval, but I won't sing. So, but with that, I'll turn it over to Travis. He is the architect for America's Home for Rent, and he'll take it from here.
Good evening. I'm Travis Saisang. I am the product manager for America's Home for Rent over the Southeast. All right. I wanted to provide some overview. On our last visit, I believe there were some comments about the elevation, so we wanted to kind of show you a little bit of the colors. Brick down here. We have metal roofs, architectural shingles. If you want to show that to them a little closer. Some colors of the actual townhomes. We're gonna have 8 different colors schemes. That's the reason why we're showing 8 unitplex at the moment. But again, we are doing 6 and under. We're gonna have 6, a 5, and a 4, and some 3s. All right. And I believe the last comments that we had, we heard your comments and we implemented some of that. You know, we raised the gables and the front elevations. On the side, did you get to the sides and rear? And then on the sides and rears, as you can see, we added a little more detailing. We wanted to kind of show a little extra. We added carriage garage door styles. We added shutters. We also added different materials on the rear with our band board. And then on the sides, we added a gable eyebrow to kind of break that siding up a little bit. And there's can't really see it because we didn't color this up, but there is also a band board that kind of separates the 2 siding, kind of, you know, take away some of that large siding. Right.
Tell me when you want me to stop.
Yeah. And these are just kind of going over the different elevations. We do break them up. There was I believe a comment about not having all the same pitches. So we wanted to kind of show the stagger of the townhomes. And in this slide, we also showed the different color types. We are using Sherwin-Williams. So we wanted to make sure we use high-end product. We are doing siding, hardy plank. Wanted to bring some so you can kind of see it also. Some of the paint colors that we actually put some color on it so you can. And here's just another a color rendering of it, more of a realistic color of what they're going to look like.
I think you said the porches are 6 foot deep.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Who's that?
Minimum 6 foot deep. That's correct. And that, yep, and that's all we have. And that's,
Okay. You want to talk about the amenity center? Doesn't look like it's changed too much.
no, we didn't really change too much on that. What we wanted to do was kind of show it on the fly through,
Mhm.
what it looks like. So we kept the gables, kept the color, Sherwin-Williams, alabaster. We're going to provide brick to kind of give it a little color in the bottom, and then we're going to paint that same color. So it'll give it a little texture. And then there's the metal roof on the dormers, black windows.
All right, well, since you're up here and we've got the amenity center up on the screen first, we can start with that. You want to start?
Not really.
Okay, Matt.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, we're going to come back to the site, I think, and we can get Seaman Whiteside back up, but anything on the townhomes?
I don't remember if it was this project or another one, but the 6 in a row is a concern. And I don't know if you've driven through Nexton at all. On the other side of the interstate, there's a development, and I don't know the name, but they have various lengths of townhomes. I don't know what their width is compared to yours, but when you see 6 in a row, it just seems to, for me, that kind of breaks the scale of what seemingly is the Somerville feel. I think the 4 and 5, the 4 is a little weird because it's like, it doesn't really look like a building. It looks like the 5 at least kind of looks like a building. If you could put that up. The 4 doesn't really look like a building. The 6 is I think it's too big. It just, it looks nice on a piece of paper, but I would encourage all of you to drive down Nexton Parkway, other side of the interstate, and you can see the difference between the 5 and the 6 in terms of just the mass of what that is. It just seems like it's too much for this neighborhood. Are you only using an alabaster on the amenity center? You're not using it on the
We do
homes?
have some on the houses. Yeah.
So I think it works when you have those battens because that's going to cast some shadow. I'm worried about the white on anything that doesn't have some surface relief because it's just going to be too bright and too white. And white typically, I don't know if white's a great color for this area. It almost needs something to tone it down a little bit. I think on the amenity center, it works again, because you have so much surface texture, it's going to cast shadows. You have the brick. I think it's going to break the white up. On the townhomes, it makes me a little nervous, especially on the ends where you don't have a lot of relief.
I think I do agree a little bit on the 6, but I believe 6 is a norm. I know 8 it's not. 8's definitely too long, but I think 6 you'll probably see that a little more.
In Somerville? Yeah, I think when I've seen it, I thought that was a mistake. And we've pushed back on at least 2 projects that have come to the board. That 6 was, and Tim, you could help me remember.
6 was the
names.
max that you guys have prescribed for the others.
Mhm.
The 2 other townhome developments, I think, showed one with 8, one with 7. And the general consensus of the board overall was that 6 would be the maximum number that
Okay.
made sense.
Well, I would like to hold until the board has a chance to go by and look at next. And if you look at that and come back and say, no, 6 looks great, I'll listen. I would, respect your opinion. But again, it's a lot. And it doesn't really, to me, it doesn't really look like a building. It looks like 6 things. And, when you go to the older city, and I realize this is a new building, but, where townhomes have been successful in the history of the United States, at least. And I think it's true in other countries, but Boston, Georgetown, and the towns around DC, they work because I think they're all different. and they're intentionally different. They're different enough, and they frame a narrower street, and it gives you the sense of this urban feel. But, you know, we really don't have that. And it just seems like townhouse is a challenge. This many townhouses in a community is a challenge. I just don't get the sense that, you know, what are we really creating in this neighborhood? It's a nice place to live, but outside of that, the apartments or homes are very nice, but outside of that, to me, it just doesn't feel at all like Somerville.
I guess that was a question that I was going to ask you is, did you have any references to Somerville architecture anywhere? And I'll just add, Aspen kind of gives it away. But go ahead.
I was gonna say, some of it is just more us being, driving around Nixon, seeing Somerville and town of Somerville, because what we've seen is this is the new spot, right? Everybody wants to be here. It's very trendy. And so we wanted to kind of give that flair, a little bit of that modern look, but not necessarily modern. We wanted to be a little more transitional into this area. And so we wanted to provide that architecture in our townhomes to match what we're showcasing of our amenity building. So we were going for the, you know, the transitional farmhouse look. And that's what we're starting to see around all of Nexon. And so that's what we want to do, to kind of give that new trendy, new style, new look to town of Somerville.
Well, you know, using Nexton as an example is probably not the best way to go looking in the town of Somerville, because it's just uniquely different. It's kind of a separate town in and of itself in a lot of ways. But before I say anything else, anyone down here have any other questions for him on the architecture?
I think it'll work.
Apologize.
I think it'll fly. I think it'll work.
I do agree with Greg. I think my biggest problem, well, the benefits of the 6 for the other folks that have presented was that they had 7s and 8s. And so when I know that when we kind of said, all right, we're not going any higher than that, they had 8-unit buildings up there, which just didn't look good. So that was probably why the 6s got in a little bit easier on some of them. But I think my biggest problem with the elevation is the end. It's just it's big, and I know that there will be probably more detail with that mid band that you were talking about. So I would say next time you come back, maybe have something scaled up and a little bit more detail. The shutters are just applied, right?
I'm sorry.
The shutters are just applied.
They are, yes.
Okay.
You probably need to make those operable. Put the hardware on to make them operable.
We'll look into that.
Okay. Any other comments on the architecture?
Yeah, my comments were less on the architecture, the sort of overall feel of the street. And
Right.
You're using the townhouse model, but you don't have the events or amenities in the community that you would find in the cities where they built townhouses. There's no business, there's no restaurant, there's no pub, there's no public space, there's no library, there's nothing. So it's kind of like you're using a traditional building form, but you're not creating a context where that building form was typically used. And townhouse makes a lot of sense. I think people in this community would love to have townhouse because there's not a lot of that product. So I understand the demand, but it just seems a little bit foreign based on the site plan and what else is in the community.
All right. You guys have any comments on the site? They are seeking preliminary approval, so.
Let's find a good one. Hold on. Twice. That good?
That's fine. I know we really already looked at the site quite a bit, so.
I feel like we already commented on, it appears, based on this drawing, there's one way in and one way out. And I just think that's a non-starter.
And that's why these are being dealt with together with the following project is the apartments south that will front on North Maple Street. And that will address that connection between North Maple Street and Old Dairy. So
Is there a
the,
drawing of that in this set?
not in this set.
They have not developed it yet.
So since
It's in
this
the
is a
works.
master plan development, you will see it in the other part of the overall master plan, which will come up with when that development comes up south side.
Can you just point to where it is, Tim?
And Aaron, correct me, this is where that they're going to be coming in, right?
That's correct.
And where does
You,
it?
you don't have enough frontage on Dairy Road to have more than one entrance. So your only option is to come through back over to the Maple Street.
So there is a full traffic impact analysis that's been done for
Yes.
this whole property master planned as a whole.
And engineering is looking at that. You'll turn that into engineering, not us.
That's correct. So engineering, SCDOT, everyone's involved, even the developers are involved as far as how these entrances interact with this master plan development. So although on this right here, you do not see the access to North Maple, that North Maple access will happen with the development to the south.
Makes sense.
And since it is master planned, each developer is responsible for their piece. Now, also just to kind of comment on the townhomes as well. So since this is a planned development, it's always been intended for single family. As part of the PD, there is a part that is townhomes. With that, if we were to take a step back and look at the master plan community as a whole, there will be neighborhood commercial that is inputted into this area as well. That kind of hits on some of that activities that you said for this area. So although it may not be highlighted right here currently, this area master plan as a whole will have that neighborhood commercial that's been popped into different places throughout this larger development as well.
Well, we can only react to what is in front of us.
Yes, sir.
So-
I understand.
The other concern, two other concerns I have, it's not real clear what the scope of this approval is. Is it the 4 vertical slots just south of the pond, or is it all the skinny little lots up here? It's all of those.
Yeah,
So
it's the
the-
townhomes only. The single family
Okay,
does not
that's fine.
come
That's
to
what I thought.
DRB.
So a lot of the townhomes, it appears, are open on the ends. And I have 2 friends who have townhomes that bought end units specifically so they get better views out of the building. And I didn't see any drawings that would indicate that those end units are special because you can put more windows and perhaps arrange the floor plan to take advantage of having windows on 3 sides. And it looks like they're kind of treated the same way they would be if they were kind of, mid-block between units. It seems like a opportunity for the making those units better. And I think it's also going to make the street views nicer to have a more regular pattern of windows on those facades.
Yeah, we could let me look at that. Obviously if they're side by side. We really don't want to have it more spice lots.
Mhm. And when I look at the ponds, and I heard how you described it, but if you've been to the ponds neighborhood, which is out on Central by where we are, those are real ponds. They show up on colonial era maps. And when you go into that neighborhood, it really feels like a pond. Because of the shape and configuration and the topography around, when I look at these, I'm like, okay, that's a retention pond. And it's shaped like a retention pond and it's graded like a retention pond. And it's not really I just don't see that as like an amenity.
Those are actually currently existing.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit.
You can change them. That's why we have bulldozers, because you can push dirt around.
So there are existing ponds that are actually underneath, they're considered wetlands. And so although we may be improving them slightly, they're going to keep that same characteristic that they already had. If you go and look at like a Google image, if we were to pull up like an aerial of it, you will see those were the ponds that were dug by the Salisbury many, many years ago. And so we're keeping that in the character of this site by keeping those there, and then heavily amenitizing it as well in order to create it as a focal point for this property. I also, just to comment on the pond that you see like far plan west, we softened the slopes and tried to be very creative with our grading in order to make it not look like a retention pond, but rather as a more amenity area.
Yeah, and I think that's very nice. And with your description, when you're talking about this amenity, I was looking at that one and saying, oh yeah, that's really nice. And then I realized you were talking about those two things in the middle. I'm like, oh. So can you make it like the one on the left and really turn this into something that would, create what place are you recreating in this neighborhood?
Sure.
And it's a concept where we're just creating some streets and some buildings, or are you creating a place? Because I think you can't really create a place with a street.
I hate to interrupt, but we're gonna move on, and these pond shapes is immaterial because you're not gonna see it from the air. You're gonna see it from standing 5 feet off the ground and looking across water. So it's totally immaterial.
I disagree. It's immaterial.
We need to move on. We've been on this subject too long.
All right, having said that, all right, appreciate all your comments, and they are asking preliminary approval. Want to see if anyone has a motion they would like to make.
Motion preliminary approval.
Any second? All right, we have a second. Further discussion on this? Taking into consideration everything that we discussed.
Not necessarily part of the discussion.
No, it didn't seem like it. All right. So we have a motion and a second for preliminary approval. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? I'm also a no on the architecture, based on the architecture. So the motion carries 3-2. Yes, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, that was number 4 on old business. Looking at number 1 on new business, Broadstone, North Maple Street. Aforementioned development. While y'all come up, Tim, you want to enlighten us on the staff comments?
The first item under new business is the Broadstone North Maple Street. The applicant is requesting conceptual review for a proposed new 348 unit multifamily development on 23 acres. This property is zoned PUD, planned unit development. This is also part of the Salisbury parcel. Based on the initial review, the following staff's comments. The site conceptually meets requirements. The proposal includes, as I said, 348 units in 14 buildings, an amenity center, and 574 parking spaces. This is 1.64 spaces per unit. Grading and utility plan, landscape, tree preservation plan, tree removal permit and full architectural drawings are still required. A connection to the single-family townhouse development to the north is being shown on the plan and is required. The conceptual architectural images are actually from a different project. So these are just using for examples. Let's get to the site plan. Let's use that one.
So the architecture that is demonstrated is not what they would.
Is what has been built elsewhere, is what I understand from what was submitted.
All right, you want to go ahead?
Yep, absolutely. Good afternoon. My name's Andrew Howe, and I'm with the developer Alliance Residential. Just a little background on us is we are the #2 largest multifamily developer in the country. I'm the regional partner that sits in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I cover North and South Carolina. And as you know, he alluded to earlier, we've built several deals in the Charleston market, and obviously extremely excited to look at this opportunity with you all. As he previously mentioned, we're looking to develop here 348 units, all 3-story product with a detached clubhouse. So kind of some quick background on us as it relates to the architectural elevations. We wanted to represent a project that we have down the road in the Ingleside master plan community. Within that community, we wanted to just kind of show you guys what kind of the building footprints look like, the clubhouse, kind of the level of detail that we go into, but certainly we understand that those will not be kind of the final colors or elevations by any means. So wanted to certainly get some initial feedback from you all. We really appreciate your time. And at this point, I wanted to bring up obviously Aaron Schmidt at Seaman Whiteside, who is our project manager and civil engineer on this one, to answer any additional questions that you guys may have.
Not Aaron. I'm Jenny Palmer. Giving Aaron a break. I'm the civil engineer at Seaman Whiteside. This is the project that is to the south that Aaron was talking about from the project that you guys just saw. And this spine road that comes through there is the connector road to the single family development up top. That spine road will be dedicated to the town, so it will be a dedicated right of way. We have had a couple of meetings now with the town on it. And again, the traffic study is in the process of starting to be updated with some new unit counts and some of the other changes that have been made in the past year with the master plan. And in that traffic study, it will include this full access and the full access on the Old Dairy Road, as well as some of the other traffic improvements that this whole master plan will involve. So the point of, again, and this is conceptual in nature, so obviously some things will change as we move forward. These are garden style apartment buildings, and we tried to keep the expansive parking lots to a minimum. You can see we've kind of put them off to the side so that most of the development is more of an on-street parking type situation. We've met with the town a few times on the layout and how it relates to the PD. And so we're in constant communication on that with them. The neighborhood commercial component is going to be all along the frontage of North Maple. And those will be coming online as different developers develop those commercial parcels. And where, again, the town has a very much a vested interest in this project. So anytime we're doing a development in this particular PUD area, we have upfront meetings with the town and go through everything with them.
Are there any other drawings on this? Tim,
What?
is this the main drawing on this?
Yeah, there's,
Looks like
so that's the colorized version. This is the black and white. The rest are plats really for
Yeah, that's,
that, but
go back to this one.
and then we have, as I said, the architectural examples.
And the trees that are shown on the rendering, well, not the rendering, those are hard to see because we have trees input there too, but the tree, go to the other plan. Yes, thank you. So the trees that you see highlighted on this plan are the trees that our landscape architect and the town's arborist walked and marked. The yellow ones are C grade trees. And then the blue and the green are A's and B's. So we're definitely keeping blues and greens. We'll keep as many C's as we can. Obviously, there's mitigation that's required in the PD. So we will make sure any tree removals go through the town permitting process and the mitigation process.
Okay, so you really have two, although they're kind of close together, but you have two accesses to Maple, right?
Correct. Yeah. The other one is a right in, right out, and it'll be used more for the neighborhood commercial parcels that are fronting the road, more so than it will the apartment complex.
This may be a random question. I know you're ready for it.
I'm ready.
Can you give an example of other communities that are built that have, in addition to the one that's north of here, single entrance for this many homes? I mean, 300 and some units. Any other examples of that in the low country that are really limited? It seems really limited as far as access goes. But honestly, I don't pay attention every time I go somewhere else necessarily. So can you think of an example that we can kind of, that would come to mind?
White Gables on Central Avenue,
Mhm.
Mhm.
Briarwood on Trolley Road,
Okay.
and a couple more of them.
Yeah, White Gables for sure. Okay.
on Trolley.
All right. Well, start with the engineers.
The engineers are sitting together.
They band
Architects are
together.
sitting together. It feels like the referee in the middle.
Time will,
Not that old.
And in this plan, I will add, we are providing more open space than is required for the PD. And
Okay.
will be amenitized very well with open space areas and their amenity center,
okay.
as well as other little pocket areas and a centralized open space area in between that pot of 4 buildings that you see there in the middle.
Yeah. Well, we're not voting, so
Right.
we're just commenting.
right, yeah.
So,
I want your feedback.
Matt Hart.
Jenny, is any part of this going to be gated, or can traffic free flow through the parking lot? If, for example, I'm coming in off Maple Street and I want to get back to the single family, I can go right through that apartment complex, right?
Yes, that is true. This will be a public road.
Okay.
So,
Well, the spine road's public road, but all the interior roads,
they're not gated, are they?
This will not be gated.
okay.
Hart.
I like the way you laid out the parking with the units. I'm not sure that I understand the need for some of the additional parking that's not around the units. And then as far as the main spine road, I'm not sure I understand why there's some on-street parking. And I assume there's probably going to be some pedestrian access sidewalks.
Yes, there will be street trees. There's going to be pathways that interconnect all of the developments that are all around there, even the future development that will be going to the left of this. There will be a trail, as you can see on this plan, there will be a trail that goes around the pond and up that joins and interconnects up to the single family development as well. So there will be a lot of pedestrian interconnectivity. The on-street parking that's on the right of way, that's something that we're working through with the town. That parking is not necessarily required to meet the requirements of this development. It's more of a kind of a planned scenario for other things that are being explored in this same area.
Bill?
I think the staff comments were there were 1.64 parking spaces per unit. And versus 2 that would be normal. So
One is normal.
One is required.
One is what's
oh,
required.
1 is required, okay.
Yeah.
But if, most people have 2 cars and company from time to time, so
Right.
1 would not be adequate.
Yeah, so normal parking ratio for us is we typically do 1 space per bedroom. So what you'll see in this community is 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. And it's usually broken out in about 50% 1s, 45% 2s, and 5% 3s. So we usually do 1 space per bedroom plus about anywhere between 5 and 10% guest parking for a surface park car. Yeah, it usually lands out around 1.6. Given that most of the deals that we've built, our average is probably anywhere between 300 and 350 units that we're developing.
Okay.
Any comments?
I'm gonna give my comments.
Oh, okay. Well, I think the biggest concern is access. We talked about it. If it's good to go, then that would be fine. I think I'm not really going to comment on the architecture. It's kind of like a what if, and I mean, we can look at it and look at the renderings, and they look nice. I'm not sure about the buildings there, and so we'll just have to kind of cross that bridge when we get to it. But if I were to make a comment about the architecture, it would be present the architecture that's going to be there, and we'll look at it. I mean, it's all. I know this is conceptual, but it's also really speculative. So.
Yeah, and I think one thing just kind of new about maybe how we operate our process. So the project you guys are kind of looking at here is our most relevant one. It's in the Ingleside Master Plan community. So right off Palmetto Commerce Parkway, if you're familiar. And one of those things, obviously, within that community, very similar design review board, if you will, that we had to go through. So one of the things that we do that I think kind of sets us apart from a lot of our competitors is that we go through a process what we call as a charrette. So we usually get the design team involved, the land sellers involved, and then in this case, if any of the town council members or community wants to be involved, we kind of outline like what's the overall theme for this project, right? So similar to probably what you're going to hear a lot is where's the coastal vibe, if you will. I think for the town of Somerville, like you guys have been mentioning, the beginning is you want to have a feel that welcomes it into the community and not something that's completely different, which we totally understand. So I think going forward, if there's anything maybe specific that you guys are looking for, we welcome that feedback. And we can certainly kind of adjust. But also as we move through this process, we want to make sure it works for all parties. Certainly.
I think my comment would be to take a good look at Somerville architecture. It's not coastal, and it's certainly not the same as Palmetto Commerce, but definitely take a close look at Somerville architecture. We look for elements that kind of connect it with the town. We don't want to change the town. We want to make the good parts better, and so that would be what I would have to add there.
That's certainly our goal.
Okay.
I don't really know much about the PUD, but this is really dense. And this is a nice drawing in front of us. I give you a lot of credit for facing it north, which I think makes sense. I don't see that very often, but putting the pool on the north side is a great idea. The entrance is very nice, but when you get into the bulk of the development, and whether you look at the site plan or that isometric, that is dense. And there's really no street. And, you know, when I think of a street, I'm thinking about parallel parking and not perpendicular parking. And it just feels like the goal was to put as many boxes on this piece of land as possible. And I just don't see any like place, memory, focus, destination. I don't see any of that. It's just is like, how many boxes can we squeeze in the site? It's just a lot of parking. And, you know, I can see some nice sidewalks over in the upper left, and that's great, but I don't know, just the feeling of density and cars everywhere is not what, if you go outside and just walk around Somerville, I've been in like inside about 6 or 7 buildings in downtown. I've lived here for 22 years, but I've walked through that space and driven through that space thousands of times. And it just has a great feel. I don't even go in the buildings. It's the space that the buildings create around Hutchinson Square and really, you know, sort of beyond that, all the way to the church I used to go to or should still go to. I mean, it's just a really nice walking experience. And when I look at this plan, I don't see any of that. I don't see one example of where you'd say, hey, you know, I'm gonna go for a little walk and it's gonna be really pleasant. And we're trying to, you know, Somerville has this incredible fabric that somebody built over decades. And there's just something magic about it. And I like to see people figure out that fabric and bring it up to date in a new location where people just want to be outside because it's just nice. And again, I look at these projects and I just don't see any of that. I don't see that as a driving factor. I see the driving factor as more buildings, more parking, and put in a couple of trees and it'll be fine. That's not how they built Somerville.
From a site planning standpoint, what this doesn't show is all of the other open space amenities and little pockets and how all those are going to be interconnected together. And that's something that we're going to be working on as we move the project forward. We can certainly take a look at redoing some of the layout. We've already started talking about some of that and getting ideas and working with the town on areas that we want to change and have a better layout, specifically there around the traffic circle, where the Amenity Center is located, and make that more of a destination type.
Yeah, I would wonder, could you continue that boulevard that you started and wrap that through your site and get as much parking off of that? So at least you have some organizational principle or hierarchy in your site plan. And if somebody said, well, I want to walk or ride my bike to the Amenity Center, they're not just weaving in between all these cars, but there's a smooth, and that's just one thought, just some sort of organization that kind of makes sense and not just endless. And they're not even roads, they're parking lots.
I think
You've
that's-
surrounded the buildings with parking lots.
I think that's probably what I would say is that it's more, it's the difference between an apartment complex and a community. And they're not really roads. They're just everywhere you go, with the exception of the Spine and back to Maple is a parking lot. So
I think the most important drawing you could do as you're testing this are site sections. So you really get a feel for, as I mentioned, Hutchinson Square, what is the space like between the buildings? And the best drawing for that is a site section, so you can understand where's the road, where are the trees, where's the sidewalk, how tall are the buildings? Because something might work with a 2.5-story building that may not work with a 3. And are the spaces you're creating between the buildings nice? I don't know, they might be, can't tell. I kind of think they're too tight to be nice, but you may come back and show these site sections and views between the buildings and say, that really is a nice spot.
Yeah.
It just is not
this
apparent
the
from
feedback
this.
that we want from you guys. You know, when we bring a conceptual plan to y'all, we don't go into that much detail at that point in time. Because we do, this is why we're here, is to get y'all.
Right, but we like to see what is the big picture concept? If you had to explain what is the site design concept to this project, you should be able to say that in like 1 or 2 sentences. You should be explaining it to a 12-year-old or somebody with my level of intellect. It should be very simple. This is the concept of the neighborhood. When I look at the site plan and the perspective, I have no idea what the concept is.
All right. Anyone else want to comment? Okay, well, it's conceptual, so that's what we have.
Okay. Well, we
And,
appreciate your comments.
Thank you guys.
Chew on that and we appreciate it.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thanks.
All right. Next item is number 2 on new business, Alta North Maple Street. Conceptual.
This is a request for conceptual review for a proposed 338 unit multifamily development on 18.3 acres. This property is zoned GB General Business. This is on the other side of North Maple Street, just south of the old dairy intersection. Following your staff's comments, the site conceptually meets requirements. The proposal includes 338 units in 5 buildings, an amenity center, and 8 garage buildings and 533 parking spaces for 1.57 spaces per unit. A grading and utility plan, landscape plan, tree preservation plan, tree removal permit, and full architectural drawings are still required. The conceptual architectural images generally meet UDO requirements and include a mix.
All right. If you just state your name, sign in, and we'll get rolling.
Yeah, hey, good afternoon. Dennis Jordan with Wood Partners. I live and work here in the Charleston area. Wood Partners is a developer, owner, operator of multifamily units. We're a national firm with 20 plus offices across the US. As noted earlier, we are proposing today for conceptual review 338 garden style apartments. A majority of our buildings are 3-story walk up, with the exception of one central building in the center there, which is a 4-story building that will be elevator served. The entire community will be surface parked. We, given that there's been a lot of talk about aesthetics and just kind of tone of the design, our most recent experience in the Charleston market is actually in Somerville, in Nexton, a community that we completed in 2019. It is now known as Elevate at Brighton Park. We'll jump into some conceptual elevations and renderings, but I would say the look and feel that we're going for, I'd use the word low country. Again, we're trying to be very aware of what Somerville is and responding to that. Again, we'll turn it over to an architect, Glenn Allison with 2PA, who can speak a little bit more to that. The only other thing that I will note is we will share a shared drive, which you can see in this exhibit here, with our adjacent property owner. Dust Off is the name of their LLC. We are in the process, as I speak, of negotiating that access agreement. Jenny with Seaman Whiteside.
Do I need to sign in again? I'm good. My name's there. So this site, you can see it's kind of an odd shape. So there is a ditch, a quite large ditch that runs through bisects the site right there, and separates kind of the apartment area, and then the long skinny piece to the south, where they have some garage units down there. So that ditch will be kept intact. It won't be piped or anything. It will remain natural, including the trees on the banks and everything that's there. There is an easement on that ditch that is a town easement, and that runs all the way to the other side of the property across North Maple Street and up to Rumps Hill Creek. So the main thing with this project is it is zoned NMX and it is adjacent to single family. So the requirement from the town is a 30-foot buffer, which we have shown on this site plan. One of the areas that we wanted to mention to the board and get your feedback on is a reduction in the buffer where the lower corner is of the big U-shaped building. We've got a driveway coming through right there. And we have the 30-foot buffer measured from the drainage easement line. So that drainage easement through there is 40 to 50 feet wide. And then we've got another 30-foot buffer on top of that. So to get that road away from the corner of the building a little bit and to be able to have a 24-foot wide road through there, right now it's 22. We would like to request a buffer reduction there of half. So going down from 30 feet to 15 feet. I know this is conceptual, so y'all don't make a motion on that right now. I just wanted to throw that out there and get your thoughts to whether or not y'all feel that would be possible as we move forward with the site plan. Another thing I'll say is that we were strategic about putting the buildings along the road frontage to give that sense of place and more of a street feel for those buildings. And then obviously with the clubhouse and the pool kind of in the courtyard area of that U-shaped building. And when you enter the site, the clubhouse is what you see from that new fourth leg of that intersection.
Okay. Glenn, you want to talk about the architecture?
My name is Glenn Allison. I'm an architect for Pool and Pool Architects. As Jennifer was saying, we've got 5 residential buildings. 4 of those are 3 stories, and the U-shaped building in the center is 4 stories. That's kind of the focal point of the site. And what we've done in keeping with kind of trying to reduce the scale of the project is pull the 4-story building, kind of stick it in the middle. The ones along Maple Street and the building behind the U-shaped building are 3 stories. And for conceptual, those are the ones that we elevated to get kind of give you guys an idea of sort of design direction of at least the 3 stories. And we also submitted 2 sort of different elevations to get your feedback as well. So next slide. There you go. So this is sort of just a perspective showing sort of the volume, the 3 stories along Maple Street, the main entrance to the clubhouse, and then the U-shaped building. And you see the garage is kind of tucked in the back. Next slide. There you go. Sort of the inspiration for this is these buildings tend to be long, multifamily buildings. So articulation of the bays is something we kind of want to look at. So the inspiration photos here are showing different bays that are show relief in the facade and also material changes. The other thing that we like to articulate more is brackets, just to give more texture, and then the use of different materials for, again, more texture and emphasis on certain parts of the building. Next slide. So this one we'll call is sort of closer to sort of the downtown Somerville, where lots of texture, not a lot of color change, sort of a muted palette. But again, the bays are sort of defined and broken up. And we use different materials to kind of emphasize corners and bays. These buildings are going to be unique because if you're coming towards Somerville on North Maple, you'll see sort of obviously the long side of the building, but the short side as well. So it's kind of a building with no back, if you will. So we kind of emphasize the bays on the ends as well in this one. Next slide, please. This is a little bit bolder take. Again, definition of the bays, both on the end and along the North Maple Street side. And again, just more use of different materials. And again, sort of a bolder, I guess this is closer to what you might see in Nexton right now. Next slide. Again, this is looking across North Maple from Old Dairy. Just a perspective showing you the kind of the size and layout of the buildings. Next slide. And then this is coming towards Somerville from North Maple. So you get a glimpse of the end of the three buildings on the road and also the clubhouse and the larger building in the back. Next slide. And then same kind of perspective where we use the sort of the bolder elevation, if you will. Next slide. And just flat elevations of what we're proposing for this building or the other building, or maybe it's a combination of the two.
Okay. And the 4-story building would carry on similar architecture characteristics. Yeah, I'm a little nervous that the clubhouse is going to get dwarfed. You know, the big apartment complexes or condos that are, 12 stories, or I say big, but around here that would be big. You have a little clubhouse, and the scale is so much different that it almost makes more sense with 4 stories and the clubhouse. I'm a little nervous about how that clubhouse is just going to get. It really doesn't end up with a street presence when it's kind of the street presence is overwhelmed by everything that's behind it. But we'll open it up to these guys and see what they would like to add. Matt?
Color or?
Yeah, either one. That's fine. So you're billing it as 338 units on 18 acres, but because of the shape, it's more like 338 units on 12 acres. I think it's just too much. I think the buildings are overwhelming. I think the parking lots are too long and too straight. Coming off North Maple Street, it's a straight shot to the back. There's nothing to break up any of the traffic, and there's really no room for anything other than buildings and parking lots on this lot. I just think it's too much. We're not voting on it, but that's just my opinion of it.
Okay. Art. Junior.
The 3D rendering looks massive. And why were you counting the 30-foot buffer off of the easement and not the property line?
Because that's how we require it be done.
Okay.
So basically what you're looking at, if you don't get some break on the easement, you just have to make the 4-story building a little shorter.
Yeah, we would have to kind of rework that corner a little bit, I imagine, because it is a very close area right there between the corner of the building and that road.
Well, and it'll probably end up close anyway. It's just something that tall, that close to a road might be a little overwhelming. So, okay, Bill.
I'm not real sure. I'm disoriented about where this piece of property is on North Maple. Is it on,
It's right across the street from the project we just looked at.
it's across the street then?
Yeah, North Maple and Old Dairy comes in from the top side.
So
Dairy comes in.
This is Old
So
Dairy
you're
right
across
here.
the street from Old Dairy intersection.
Correct.
Is that correct?
That's right.
Yep. And right now you don't have any neighbors at all there right now. No anticipated neighbors either, right?
Well, that where Tim's cursor is, all those are single family.
What
along-
is?
Along the south. Yes, there's nothing, if you're looking at the site, there's nothing left of that yet. And there's nothing to the right of that yet.
Right.
There's a big power line easement that runs right there on the right side. So where the road is gonna be coming in, there's a little triangle piece right there that is owned by Dust Off. And that is gonna be a shared road between them. It's gonna go underneath the power line to the development that the other property owns.
Okay. So you're across from the Salisbury's houses.
Okay, their houses are a little bit further down.
A little bit further to the left on the plan. Okay, in the 15 feet, right now, since we don't know what the neighbor is, we don't know what the impact would be with the neighbor or anything else.
Well, where it might be easier if I can come up there and show you on the piece of paper. Be right here in this area. Yeah, because right now, this is the drainage easement right here on the existing ditch, which is about 40 to 50 feet wide right here. And then we've got another 30-foot buffer on top of that from the easement line. So that area right in there where there's this pinch point is where we would request a reduction in buffer.
Okay, well, that doesn't impact anybody or anything really. To have the buffer reduced.
Right, it's not reduced. I mean, the drainage easement width is still the same. It's
Still got
just
the,
reducing
still got
that.
the drainage ditch, yeah. Okay, I think the 4-story building is, I can't tell what it's gonna look like. It looks like something in Myrtle Beach maybe. But
Well, I can promise you it won't look like something. As I stand here today.
maybe Nomo and Charleston. Could be
No,
Nomo.
and again, we're going after conceptual approval. So we've given you two, I think, very different elevations, and that vocabulary will carry throughout the rest of the buildings.
Okay, thank you.
You guys have any comment on the more bold versus muted buildings?
Well, I congratulate you on taking a chance on the bold. Personally, I like the muted version better.
Which one now?
The muted version. Yeah. Let me ask you a question, Jenny, too. Is that the driveway off Maple? Is that right in, right out?
Yes, that one, where the words on Maple Street, that is right.
Okay, so coming home at 5 o'clock, 338 cars are going to have to come in from that side road if they're coming from the interstate.
No, they'll come in right there on that road across from Old Dairy.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
So there's a traffic light there, so that works pretty well.
There's not one there yet, but there will be.
Sure.
Not yet, not right there.
I think I would lean more towards the more traditional look for it. Because something can be well done and not be appropriate for that particular location. So I think that's probably what we'd be looking at for that, in my opinion. Having said that, the muted one probably needs a little bit more color to me.
Yeah,
It's a little on just the solid. I know that materials will be different, like as you said, around the corners and the recesses and everything, but yeah, look, for me, looking down future presentations, just, focusing on maybe working in a little bit more, a little more color into those. Not, it doesn't have to be bold, but just something.
I agree with Matt. It just seems really dense. It seems like buildings in a parking lot. There are no roads. Every time you come and go, you're driving by parked cars, you're driving through parking lots to get to your house. The buildings don't respond to the interesting non-orthogonal nature of the site. All your buildings are rectangles. There's not a single rectangle shape in your site. It just seems like you're imposing geometry on the site, that there's some opportunities to work with some of those diagonals and just make the whole site plan much more interesting. And capture those funny little triangular pieces in a way that can be used. I don't see any real amenity on this site. I don't see it how it's building an urban fabric or a residential fabric. There's no sense of what the space is when you're out walking about. It just seems like it's just like the others. It's buildings in a parking lot. And I just don't think that's what we're looking for. We want to extend an urban fabric. People are in Somerville because it has a nice urban fabric. People talked about projects in North Charleston and Ladson. That's different. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just different. Somerville is unique, and we're trying to grow that, not say, oh, if you want a nice place, go to downtown Somerville. Everything else is just like every place else in the country. I just don't see anything there. If you could flip to the architecture slide, I think there's a point when buildings get too big to have pitched roofs. And I think this is an interesting, very interesting site, because as far as I know, it's the first time the DRB has looked at buildings along Maple Street.
Yeah, I mean, other than what's directly across the street and the prior conceptual plan that had some buildings closer to North Maple Street.
But this is a major,
This is the first time
a
we've
major
had
statement.
right on
Yep.
North Maple.
And based on the size of the building, I'm not convinced pitch roof is the right way to go. I'm not sure, based on the car speeds and the number of people who use that to go to the interstate and will continue to grow, that big wood-looking pitched buildings is really like, so you say, which one do you like better, A or B? I would like to get better sense of, what is the image we're trying to portray here? And do you really want to do 3 separate buildings with a totally different building vocabulary in the back? Or can you create a campus in a neighborhood that has the appropriate scale to stand up to Maple Street? I drive on that every day. And we need something on there that really creates a place. And that place is not apartment building that you'd see in any up and coming neighborhood across the country. They all look like this. When you travel around, you say, oh yeah, there's another big apartment building. And I think in some cases, that's the right image, but I'm just not sure Maple here is that really what we want to do for, a major thoroughfare and connection for the town. And it's just too much variance with the other projects, with the 4-story apartments and the amenity center. Why does an amenity center have to be 1 story?
Well,
You
again,
go downtown Charleston, the clubs are, some of the clubs are up on the
correct.
10th floor.
Correct. So, like I said before, for conceptual, we wanted to present 2 different schemes, and that vocabulary would apply throughout the project. The clubhouse and the 4-story are the clubhouse, at least in terms of scale and layout, is a placeholder right now.
It just seems like a lot of oddity with massing. You put the shortest building next to the tallest. It's just weird. The whole project to me is really odd when you're going in, you know, these parcels are newly available. We've looked at 3 different projects in the same general area. They're all independent from each other. They don't inform each other. And that's fine. They don't have to relate, but I just don't know what is the image? This is a tremendous amount of land. And it's going to be a big change on a lot of acres in a very short amount of time. And I just see like, what's the theme? What's the concept? Why is this a desirable place to live? Why does this make Somerville a better place? I look at these and I said, no, it's providing housing, and we need housing, and we need nice housing. We need nice places for kids to grow up and ride their bikes. We need nice places for young people to live. And I'm all for that. But I just don't, I look at these solutions and say, is that really the best we can do? Is that the best way we can provide housing?
Just want to jump in briefly here back to the comment about the North Main corridor and us being kind of the first group to set the stone. I agree 100% with that. I think that's the most exciting piece of what we're trying to do here. It's the most important piece, in my opinion, is that streetscape. And really, if you go back to the first meeting that we had with Jessica Schuler and a lot of her colleagues, they put that on the table from the get-go and said, look, you guys are really first to the table here, so help us understand what you think that should be. They were very direct, and I don't think they focused as much on Somerville, but they said stick to Low Country. They said if you want to do modern, we're going to tell you that we're not going to say that you can't do it, but you're probably going to progress in a much quicker fashion if you stick to something that's more traditional. So that's what we've done here, but we would love to help you guys and then the other applicants that are here this evening figure out what this look and feel is. But if this is kind of the direction based on some preliminary feedback where we thought this was headed.
And again, my concern is I think it's too big for a pitched roof building. I really do.
The 3-story or the 4-story?
The ones on Maple Street. I don't know what that dimension is, but it's looking like 80 by 200. Is that close?
It's about 230 long, but not 80.
It's a big building. That's as long as a commercial corporate office building. These are big buildings.
Well,
And there's
yeah,
nothing wrong
they're-
with big buildings on Maple. I think Maple needs big buildings.
Right.
I just don't think this residential pitched roof is, and just because it doesn't have a pitched roof, doesn't mean it's modern. None of these buildings on, well, I shouldn't say none. Most of the buildings on Main Street don't have pitched roofs.
Right.
Go to DC and Georgetown and Boston, those buildings don't have pitched roofs, but they feel residential. They feel pedestrian, they're pedestrian focused. You can't just do a big building and put a pitched roof on and say, oh, we're done.
Well,
I think it's a
they're
trap.
simplifying it. I don't think it's, I think we've broken down the bays fairly well. They are big buildings. But we can take a look at flat roofs.
We shared images again in that early meeting of our deal at Nixon, which had groups, and we got a lot of smiles and positive feedback. So
I know, and that's always the challenge with committees.
Right.
You know, there's no group think. And sometimes that's good and sometimes it's not. And sometimes it makes a challenge, but you're investing a ton of money here. And, you know, I think paying for architectural design and process upfront is the best investment anybody can make. And they say, well, it's slowing us down, it's costing us more money, but your long-term investment is gonna be much better if we get this first row along Maple to say, wow, look at that. That is great. I would love to live there. And I look at the buildings and I'm not like, I drive by it every day and I'm like, you know, it looks like a nice place to live. I'm not like, I just don't, you know, some places you go to and that's where you want to be. And
what this doesn't show, I will add, again, this is expensive, but with the streetscape, you will hardscaping, landscaping that will be more Which I think will get more of what you're.
Well, and I think with that planting zone, that landscape zone, it should give you more flexibility to do something maybe a little bit more bold and modern because it's going to be shielded by the vegetation. And I'm not saying crazy, like, stuff flying off the roof and wild colors, but just more like less, potentially a little less residential looking. Maybe more urban type housing look.
Okay. I think those are good, very good comments. Any other comments?
I don't understand what you're doing here. I mean, this building that I'm looking at in the back, 4 stories, looks like a motel in Myrtle Beach. The other buildings, with the pitched roofs and the massive size and everything, that's what I'm looking at here. I couldn't say I really like that building or I dislike it because I can't tell what it is.
Right.
Just because of the information we've got right there. So,
The detail is
more.
not there on the fourth floor.
Yeah.
That's why. it's not
Yeah.
that
Right.
would just be there.
Okay.
That's the blocking and the massing.
But that's a big building.
It is.
And, I spoke a lot about, sorry to interrupt, Bill. You can pick up again because I forgot to mention, I just think that U-shaped building is just way, way, way too big. I don't think as Bill mentioned, hotel. I'm not sure there's anything with that big a footprint in Somerville other than maybe the hospital. That's just a massive block of building. And if you cut it and let some air into the ends and light and break it up a little bit,
It is massive. And I think the challenge is going to be obviously, you've got a few different things going on and making a three-story building up on a road, residence up on the road is going to be a challenge. I don't disagree with your pitched roof comments. It would be interesting to see. I'm not saying like merge the two designs together, but I think there is room for some flexibility along there. The hard part isn't necessarily going to be what you do on Maple. It's going to be connecting it to something else that's even bigger. And so having some continuity on the whole site, I think that's kind of the main thing I'm kind of hearing a lot of is there's a disconnect. And I know we're looking at a placeholder for the 4-story, but what it does show is that it's big.
Yeah,
It's just
a
really big.
building. Yep.
And how you handle that, it doesn't mean don't do a 4-story building. It might when you get into the detailing and everything and tying it all together, but it increases the challenge, I think, in tying it all together. And it is massive for Somerville. So anyone have any other comments? All right. Well, conceptually, that's where we are. Thanks. Appreciate it. All right, we're gonna go back up to number 1, Limehouse Drive Apartments of Old Business. And the applicant is requesting final approval. Tim, you have staff comments?
All right, this is a request for final approval for a proposed new 48-unit apartment complex. The property is zoned UCMX, which is urban corridor mixed use. This is just north of the Parkers and the Wash Wizard on Limehouse Drive. If you all remember, this was all one large 6-acre parcel. The Parkers and the Wash Wizard came first. Following your staff's comments, the tree protection detail does not meet the town standards. Tree removal permit is required and a mitigation plan for preserved trees that are impacted by the construction, which must be approved by the town's arborist. The landscape buffer is required to meet the requirements of section 8.6.2C. Field verification by staff of existing materials to satisfy the requirements will be required. The residents of Limehouse Villas subdivision have been concerned with the development of this parcel since the original development of the Parkers at the corner. The neighbors have requested that a 6-foot fence be included as part of final approval for the development. The landscape plan does not show the 60-foot radius for canopy trees for all parking. Cypress are not canopy trees, and an alternative should be chosen to replace that selection. All proposed landscape materials must meet the minimum planting size requirement of section 8.7.1 of the UDO. The proposed architecture is consistent with the design guidelines and includes a mix of materials, including cementatious siding, brick, architectural shingles. This was included previously. This is a letter from a neighbor. I hope you all read it. Last week, after our meeting was canceled, I did spend some time with some concerned neighbors, both from the Limehouse Villas as well as the neighborhood on the other side of Limehouse Drive. Their primary concerns are traffic and any way to mitigate some of the additional traffic that is on Limehouse Drive right now. With the addition of the apartments, their concern is just adding to that intersection already. And another concern is the placement of the dumpster enclosure on the site plan and its close proximity to the backyards of the neighborhood there. Obviously heat being what it does to garbage, it could be problematic in the future. So those are the biggest concerns that have been raised by the concerned neighbors, and that has been brought up multiple times through the process. So I will turn it over to the applicant here and let him, do you want to walk through these?
Sure, that'd be great. Obviously, these are the site images. Currently, the property is semi-wooded. As you mentioned, we are the first development up from the Parker's gas station and Wash Wizard, a car washing place. Go to the next one. This is kind of the corner looking back. We would be the wooded area, kind of be past the bright orange square there in the middle of the picture. Go to the next one. We looked at some of the architectural character of Somerville. We tried to bring some of that into our project, the use of brick, the prevalence of a couple Flemish gables in town, and just some of the kind of urban tightness on some of the buildings. We try to bring that to our more suburban site. And then the corner is a look at kind of the brick color that's adjacent to the corner store that we're not necessarily looking to match, but just wanted to share as an idea of what's around us and would be visually kind of connected. Just generally speaking, this is where we are, near the corner of Limehouse and Ladson Road. Go to the next one. Ours is the green square site. As you can see, the A's are adjacent apartment properties. So while we have townhomes to our north and single family homes kind of to our, I guess that's westish, there are a number of apartment complexes kind of dotting this particular road in various locations and some commercial popping up along Madison. Next one. It's kind of a little better view of where our site sits compared to some of the other adjacent properties. You can see this one, the Parker's gas station is rolling forward, kind of clearing that side corner. And then next one up there would be the Wash Wizard, which is essentially just a car wash with a bunch of pavement for cars to queue. Go to the next site. Probably stick here for a little while. It's a little easier site plan to read. We are obviously a smaller development than I think some of the other ones that you've seen today. We're only 48 units in 4 buildings. So each building is of a smaller scale. Our general premise for the site design was to kind of create that pedestrian scaled, human scaled area. And so we grouped our residential buildings together. We pulled them towards the street to create something of a presence on the street. But in pulling that to that corner and pulling the buildings together, we did the best to get these apartments away from our adjacent neighbors. So obviously single family homes, which are to the left, are across the parking lot, across, water retention areas through trees. In the townhomes also, we try to pull the buildings away from that property line with a tight road and then, the various tree line buffers. And then in the middle is kind of where we focused kind of the thought of where we hope to create space for the tenants, for the residents, a place that is more walkable. Parking is not right up against the building. It isn't just parking lot, apartment building to your front door. We try to create a little bit of kind of garden space and connection, back to what Limehouse Drive may, further develop in the future. Go to the next one. Obviously, the tree survey, we are moving a number of trees. They're mostly pines. We are trying to save a couple grand trees, though they are only in 16 to 18 inch range. We don't necessarily have any big grand trees left on the site. Go to the next. And we will, obviously, I know the permitting process will come back to get those approvals. Drainage, we do obviously have to drain the site. This site plan also kind of shows the adjacent grade change to the south of us to the Wash Wizard, where our site ends. It then kind of drops down into the parking queue of the neighboring properties. And so we're essentially kind of draining our property to the left, bottom corner, and then obviously we have some retainage on the front as well, to kind of give separation from the street. Go to the next one. Yeah, just more water. Next one. This is once again general sewage and utility connections. Go to the next one. And I think I think one more. I think this kind of shows some of the landscaping a little better. We have some large trees and whatnot in the middle kind of courtyard area. A lot of plantings at the street to kind of give that separation. And then also on our northern border, doing our best to kind of fill that gap between the neighboring townhome development and our buildings as well. We do have the dumpster that they had brought up was kind of on the left-hand side towards the top of the site right over there. We're trying to bring that, it is relatively close to our buildings. There was concerns about accessibility connection to it. So it is relatively close to our buildings as well as the neighbors. It is fully surrounded, and we've added considerably more plantings around as well to try and, as best we can, kind of hide it in a way that is generally, out of the way and unsightly. We don't have a lot of space on our site, so its location has been driven a lot by that. It kind of accessibility pathways from our own units to keep it nice and close, as well as the ability for the actual dump truck to come up and grab the unit and have that maneuverability in that particular area. Go to the next one. Architecturally, they are smaller buildings, so they're only 4 units per floor, 3 floors tall. We tried to not necessarily create a rear to the building, so both sides have somewhat different facades, allows us to kind of orient them on the site in a manner that gives it view corridors and a kind of a mix of views of the buildings depending on where you are. If you want to maybe flip forward to some of the elevations or 3Ds. We've come back with a facade that tries to get a good amount of contrast, bringing some of that Flemish gable larger on one side, a little small on the other, to have a more mix of views between different perspectives on the property. We have stuck with a bolder kind of a green color to get that contrast, and a lighter brick color. It's not necessarily white. There's a decent amount of color variation, in the brick color when it actually gets put on the building. Has kind of like an old kind of knockdown feel to it. So in the process, we're not looking at painting the building white with green shutters. It's a textured brick that has a decent amount of kind of rustic white on it and a decent amount of red, between those joints and whatnot. Go to the next one. elevations, obviously a mix of that siding and the brick material, bringing that color of the siding material into shutters. I don't believe they will be actually operable, but they will have the parts to make them look operable, and they're not going to be applied necessarily to the building. You go to the renderings. Next one, color renderings. And so in the end, we're trying to kind of create, little contrast with the green and the lighter color brick, some variation in the facades. There are some porches that hang off and cantilever out over the pedestrian spaces, as well as just depth between apartments, balconies, and entrances and the doors. Go to the next preview. And being smaller buildings and kind of being able to bring our buildings relatively close together, we've created those tighter instances that give some viewer corridor and give some containment to that public space in the middle that are for the residents, where other apartment complexes might have more of just kind of parking lot to apartment building. We're trying to kind of create some pedestrian focused space in that middle area between the buildings. We got one more. This kind of looks obviously from the parking lot back to that shared public area. We've carried some of the design elements of the apartment building itself to the mail center. So the little building in the front is essentially the mail kiosk. So it'll have a similar kind of Flemish gable, brick on the bottom, just so it stands up to traffic as the residents come and go kind of from the parking area towards their units. And there's one more, because I think there were some comments last time about looking at different brick combinations. And so we looked at different kind of colors and different kind of brick schemes. I think we circled back around to that one with the greater contrast that I think just presents a kind of a sharper looking building with just a little more presence there on the site, where the other ones seem kind of drab and drowned out when we looked at different color bricks. We go back to that last slide. And I think that's what I have.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I'll go and start for a second here. I'll admit, first time we looked at it, I wasn't too excited about the green. Do you have a sample? It's growing on me. It's growing on me quite a bit. Do you have a sample, color sample of that? Anywhere?
I did, but I didn't. It managed not to get here. It is not a neon green by any means. It's probably a solid Kelly green. And the renderings make it look obviously a little more neon, but it will be your kid said, I want green. That's the idea is a
straight up green.
That color.
It'll be lighter than that.
Lighter, yeah.
Yeah.
Looks like.
I appreciate that you had Somerville references, historical Somerville references, and you can actually tell in the project. That makes sense. And I think the use of those shapes and are well done. Is there any, let's go back to the site plan for a second. Sorry.
That's all right.
So also really appreciate bringing all the buildings away from the two residential neighbors. I think that was well done. There was a concern about the dumpster. Is the dumpster in the same place or a different place than last time?
It's in relatively the same place. The shift was not a whole lot. A lot of it was looking at.
Is there any way you could? I know that dumpsters, and that's probably a full dumpster. It's not. I mean, the truck needs to access it.
Yeah.
Is there any way you can approach the dumpster location the way you did with the buildings, and pull it away? Maybe down at the bottom of the plan, adjacent to the commercial properties. Do you see any opportunities for doing that there?
There was some study of that. I know we had a lot of pushback on the availability of a dumpster to handicap residents. There is part of the review process of this project. There is some funds coming from the state, and they have a very, very strong push on making sure that these amenities and obviously trash receptacles, an amenity for every residence, that they can be accessed relatively quickly and easily. And so that was first some of the pushback of moving it was. Certainly, we try and be as receptive to everyone who comments on our project as best we can.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know unless you have some hidden retaining walls or something in there. I'm not sure that getting it in the lower left corner of that site would be detrimental ADA or accessibility wise, but I'm just trying to look at ways, when we were looking at the car wash, the neighbors to the north there had concerns already. So there was a question from one of the neighbors about a fence around the property, potential for that.
Yeah. There was when we got the email, they were thought about, I guess they have pedestrian traffic through the neighborhood. We're of course not trying to create a gated community. We are currently I'll say abandoned, but I got an empty site with trees, so I get it. People go to the woods and do nefarious things. I would hope that once we're there and there's people there, that some of the nefariousness, I guess, on our site, if it's about pedestrian traffic kind of walking through, if I don't know if a fence along one side of the property line would stop them. I don't know where they're coming from, honestly, because I know if the people are coming from single family neighborhoods or townhome neighborhoods, kind of walking through grassed areas. I don't know if adding a single fence, probably chain link, would stop that activity. We're obviously going to heavily plant it to encourage them. And as you can tell on the right hand side, Ladson is starting to create sidewalks. So there's actually pedestrian pieces that currently don't exist. So currently there's no way to get anywhere because all you have is a drainage ditch and a road. So it's a danger. So that was generally the thought, is that we weren't sure that would actually stop anybody.
Well, and to your point, you've actually eliminated a large part of why people were probably in the woods to begin with.
Yeah.
And so it may not be an issue down the road. I'm just looking at opportunities to respond to.
Sure. And we obviously want to be good neighbors. It is a change. It's been a wooded lot for quite some time. And our smaller scale and really trying to get far away from them is with the hope to allow them to retain that similar experience and not just kind of plop stuff right behind them.
Yeah, I think the providing an 8-foot opaque fence is a very reasonable request. We see that up in North Charleston. It's written into the zoning code. If there's a neighborhood next to commercial, it's not negotiable. It's a requirement. Now, it's not cheap. I think there's $65 a foot, but I'd like to see that as kind of a standard, because not only people cut, and people are going to cut through. Unfortunately, apartments, when there's more dense people, there's more people living there, there's more people's guests. You have your poorly behaved cousins and in-law, brother-in-law. You can't control them. And the people that live there might be probably great, but they're going to have guests and visitors. And that's a very short walk from the asphalt paving into somebody's neighborhood. It's visual and it's a security. And I'm very supportive of that request from the neighbor. Trash, yeah, it'd be nice to get it further away. I don't see really a great place to put it either. Unless you put it on an axis with your mail slot and those striped walkways, that would give somebody a reasonable path to the back part of the site. But the rest of the project, I think, is great. I think it's really good. And all the things I was complaining about, commenting on the earlier projects you've addressed.
Thank you.
And I'd like to see that as kind of a model for, and the buildings aren't on the grid. You have curves, you have focus, you have organization. It's all those things that I think make this a great project. The colors are fantastic. Don't tone down the green. I like the simplified. It's really, really a very good project.
Okay, agreed. Bill?
I would move the dumpster down in the lower left corner. Fit there and then we'll have access to get trucks. And I would also put a 6-foot fence. On top.
8,
6-foot.
8, 8. You could see over a 6-foot fence.
They only asked for was 6 foot.
That's a 6 to 8.
Well, 6 foot's good.
North Charleston is a great community. They're 8. We should be able to do at least what they do.
6 foot. Doesn't blow over.
Yeah.
They're eights only when you don't have a buffer is when they require 8-foot fences.
Oh, we have buffers. It doesn't matter. That's just it's in their zoning. You have to have an 8-foot opaque fence. I think it's a good policy.
I do think you could get, I don't know that dumpster would be, it seems like it'd even be closer, but if it were in that lower left corner and you could put those 2 parking spaces right there too. But I agree with Bill on that part. Nope.
For the garbage truck to access that dumpster down in the lower left, because they need to make a straight shot in there. As it is now, they're gonna go all the way around the parking lot and pull
Yeah,
straight.
they've got to
into
go
it.
there anyhow, right? Yeah.
I think visually it makes more sense having a dumpster next to the commercial property anyway.
I agree with that. It really is well done, and I'm not sure that those 2 changes, I think it would just make the project better and more friendly, neighbor friendly. You've done a lot of things that already make it neighbor friendly, and these 2 probably aren't the biggest impact, but they will impact the neighbors. They don't seem to be in a huge impact on the project. So, all right, any other discussion, comments, questions? They're seeking final approval. Do I have a motion for that?
I'll make a motion for final approval. However, with the dumpster moved and the 6-foot fence on the north property line.
All right, so we have a motion with a few comments. Do we have a second? We have a second. Any other further discussion? All right. Got a motion for final approval with comments, motion and a second. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thanks. Congrats. Next, we have 143 Berkeley Circle, a proposed 11,900 square foot multi-tenant retail building.
The second item is a request for final approval for an 11,900 square foot multi-tenant retail building. Property is zone GB, general business. And it is the following are staff's comments. The proposed outdoor covered patio area encroaches on the tree protection area numbers 2 and 3. This was addressed at the last meeting. These trees are shown on some of the plans and not others. There needs to be a consistent tree protection plan and landscape plan that coordinate. The photometric plan does not provide the required foot candle information. Staff would recommend looking at better pedestrian connectivity between the Wasabi parcel and this parcel. There is a significant grade change between the sites requiring the use of retaining wall. The applicant will be required to connect the proposed sidewalk on Berkeley Circle to the existing sidewalk that ends on the Wasabi property. Stormwater requirements will need to be approved by town staff. Concern has been raised by the adjacent business on the planned south property line. They have requested that the screening utilize year-round evergreen materials, possibly a screening fence. And generally the design of the building meets the architectural guidelines.
All right, thanks. Just state your name and your role in the project and go for it.
I'm Tim Hazelbaker. I work, I'm an architect for Live Oak Consultants. And we've been here before, of course, as you heard. And we felt that our main duty was to show you the brick and to show what happens along the south property line. So I'd like to just start with those, get those out of the way. Here's our wonderful warm brick. And if you want to pass it around. The so the arc as was mentioned, the architecture has already been thought of as acceptable, and but we wanted to be able to show the color of the brick. You could jump to one of the renderings back towards the end. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. It probably represents those upper the upper rendering there pretty much. The back of the building brought a lot of comment. And so the last time we sought approval was screening the mechanical units. So we've made sure that we've actually widened the area to give the free air zone for the mechanical units and a 7-foot masonry screen walls. And that's just to align with the door height, so you don't get an up and down kind of feeling on the back side. So there's all one kind of horizon line. And I suppose with the two side streets, it's a toss up as to which side you're trying to screen from. So we just kind of screened them from both sides. And again, we're just leaving the doorways open to free air space because there's plenty of visual breakup for screening, and a person doesn't really focus on the mechanical units. So then let's, yeah, while we're in the renderings, keep going to the, yeah.
Tell me when.
Yeah, let's stop there. That was our main objective from my point of view, to show you what a row of freely planted shrubbery looks like on that south property line. And right adjacent to that is the dental office. So there's really parking where it's darkly shadowed on the lower right-hand side. With all the discussion of the dumpster, that lower rendering is the naked view of things. And the dumpster has, again, a 7-foot tall masonry structure around it, but it's pulled to the Berkeley Circle street side, which actually separates it from the full width parking width of the dental office. So Mr. Tang has been laboring through this for many months, and he's freely given of every effort he has to get this thing to happen. And he is totally willing, and I suggest a 7-foot or an 8-foot fence all along the dental property line there. And Mr. Tang has totally agreed to that. 6 feet would put you, if I'm in a dental chair looking out, I'm 6 foot tall. I would probably be looking right at the building again with the cost of the 6-foot fence. So I kind of think that an 8-foot fence would separate the nature of what the dental office is as a commercial space from the backside of this commercial space.
Can we see that site plan? So we're gonna get it.
Yes, okay.
So that's on the,
Right at the low bottom side of the
okay.
image there. That's the dental office there. And so that parking is to the left of that. And the dumpster is part of facing that, I guess, is what you'd say. But visually, the building looks at the back of the building, not the parking lot. While we're there, I guess, there's the outdoor dining area, the upper right-hand part of the development there. Those large trees right in the courtyard right there. We have a letter from the arborist, and they have been graded as D and ugly, excuse me, D and sickly. And so we intend to take those out. No other modifications to the planting plan have been suggested, but the board considered the outdoor dining as encroaching on those tree, and certainly that's true. It would take a lot of work to ever bring those back into a courtyard kind of a feeling, and we don't really want to change the building shape for a couple old trees that'll probably die anyway. Okay. One of the concerns was connections to Wasabi, and this is Mr. Tang's development, and there was more parking provided than is required, and that's for his overflow desires. And there has been a traffic study and submitted to the city for the two entrances, the one on the upper right-hand side, one on the lower left-hand side. And so this lower left-hand side is a new entrance, and it's part of the traffic study that's, we believe, is acceptable to the town. The textured permeable right there, parking is parking, but it's permeable, and it allows for drainage to the stormwater system. And I am not sure myself of any comment between Jeff Carper, the civil engineer, and the city. I haven't been privy to any of those discussions, but he has left me notes saying that he is working on the, of course, the arborist, the photometric plan. He's working with the Dominion Energy to make sure that we adhere to the proper site lighting, and working with the staff looking for pedestrian connectivity. So there is, from the upper parking to the lower parking or to the building, I don't know what it is. It's 3 feet or 4 feet of grade change. And so a person going between Wasabi and the retail development here would go to the sidewalk on the side of Berkeley Circle and work there, because that's an even grade, and go up to the restaurant. And then by the same thing for Old Light Road, you would go outward and up rather than fight the grade change in the middle. And that's the way we planned it right now. A person would like to make a beeline straight between the two.
Tim, can I interrupt? The sidewalk here on
Yeah.
Sheep Island, this is being shown as stopping right here. It should connect to the sidewalk that goes into the Wasabi property up here. And that's one of the pedestrian connections. And obviously these would not, with the grade change would be problematic. So having that connection here on this side, which is actually closer to the building, then this pedestrian connection to Old Light Road and having them walk up and then in, this is the most important one to address that concern.
Yeah, he's written that note to me, and I didn't know if any conversation had been taking place, but he fully intends to connect the pedestrian walkway between the two. That's it. There was a comment about stormwater. You said requirements will need to be approved by the staff. We'll continue to work with the staff to ensure all requirements are met. I'm not sure, is there a stormwater issue with anybody? I think it has to do with the permeable surfaces that must meet a flow rate. I don't know. I'm the architect, not the civil engineer.
That sound like,
For stormwater, I don't know if we to address this. It just doesn't look like there is enough for all that imperviousness that is shown.
I think he intended to have some at the grade change. That's what I thought. And earlier discussions. So, but the note says we will work with staff and make it happen, because certainly
It almost appears underground detention might be needed. Underground detention. I don't see where else on the site detention can be provided.
well, I think the idea for permeability is to let it percolate to the storm system, right? I think.
With just those pervious pavers.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah.
We can address that.
So are we close, or? I think.
Doesn't appear to be. So.
They're not handling it at all.
well, it sounds like there were a number of things that town comments, staff comments that need to be addressed.
Yeah, I think some of them are simple. The screening on the south side, and if the owner has already agreed to a fence that addresses the neighbor concerns. Pedestrian access on Sheep Island, that's what, maybe 15, 20 feet of sidewalk to get to there. The big one, obviously, is detention. And that may have an impact on the site layout, depending, if they decide to go underground detention, then this could potentially be the final layout. But if they do need to provide some pond somewhere on this site, this could be blown up completely. So, you could potentially break this up. You could, if you're comfortable with the architecture, and you could give final approval on the architecture and ask them potentially to come back and have Mr. Carper address the specifics of the stormwater that staff still has concerns about. That is distinctly a possibility. Or you could handle it in other ways. So, I'm just throwing out options for you guys.
I think we would like to work with the staff to meet the requirements without having to show up and say we've met the requirements.
Well, we're on the.
If you could do that and say upon approval of stormwater detention.
I think that the major issue would be if the staff comments and Mr. Carper's ability to meet those comments, if it has an impact on the layout of the site, then we'd have to look at that again.
Yeah,
If it doesn't, then that's that.
My feelings are that we've tried many, we showed many options to show how this is best laid out. And we are 90 spaces over, as I understood it. So there's room it would affect Mr. Tang's budget to either have surface parking or underground detention pond.
Sure.
One or the other, but as far as I don't see, I've labored over this site along with Jeff Carper, myself. We don't know of any other combination. So it's a mechanical issue for us right now, not an architectural planning
Right.
issue.
Does the HVAC have-
Pardon? Oh, no, they're on the ground. They're behind
That's what's
those-
being screened at the back.
Behind those screens.
Well, our only issues, the lack of change to the rear elevation as far as changing the materials. They want to handle the screening, being a fence and landscape.
Yeah, and that was fine. My recollection of the last discussion was the view which you showed from what I call the southwest corner.
Yeah.
And you've addressed that. I think it's a really nice project. I think it's a great owner. Bus Hub is a great restaurant. I feel like it's some sake right now. But the issue of extending the fence along the dentist's office, I would think you'd be better off to take that money and just buy more bigger, better plants and just plant it.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, please?
Put the money in landscaping
Oh.
instead of more. Fence what you have, which is a dumpster, recycling and whatever that's next
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah.
And then plant in front of that and just continue the planting.
Yeah.
I think you get, in the first year, maybe it's not going to be that great, but in a couple of years, nobody's going to be able to see through
Yeah,
it.
from the dentist point of view, he's asked for fencing and certainly didn't want to leave it as it is, because that's what we were trying to show is, look, you got a ton of planting materials there. They're just not formal.
We
So
built some lots up.
It would equal, I think, a great, I like the idea of fences in that situation would.
It's fine.
I've always been in favor of urbanizing that whole little block right there. And if you draw a fence through there, it kind of starts chopping it
All
up.
right. If you want to build a fence, I would say build a fence, but the plants make the difference. I think the plants you've shown look great. It's a nice project and
So certainly planting would be, I think, a boon.
I would rather see that in a dental chair, from a dental chair than a fence.
Yeah.
Personally. The material for the dumpster and the screening, is that split face or is it brick?
It's smooth face right now and it matches the base of the building, the back wall and the dumpster. That's all the same CMU block. Yet to be, we didn't bring a sample of that, but.
Is it a smooth face block or just plain old block?
Bill,
Smooth
is your
face.
microphone on?
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Round.
yeah.
that's a nice product.
We wanted approval on the brick first. Because that's what you would match it to.
I think the brick's great. I'm not sure what color mortar you use in that.
Mm.
It's a really interesting color.
It is an interesting color. The whole
It's
building could look
actually-
like a big piece of cork if it's not done
Well,
well.
that's why I think the mortar color is important because you may want to tone that down a little bit by
Right.
using
With
maybe
a darker
with
mortar.
slightly dark, darker than the,
Yeah, no, that's what I would do.
yeah.
Just a little history, that brick is made in Colombia. And it is a new, it's not a new plant. It's a new ownership of an old plant with a new promotion of this one brick that can't be found. many
It's really
other
nice.
places.
Really
It's
nice.
Very unique to the Columbia.
Chris doesn't like it, but when it's up, he's gonna love it.
I'm sure.
It's like the green on the prior. You didn't like that at first either, but you came around.
I'm not all the way around, but
It's
fine.
It was meant, we were thinking a little Mexican, as you can see, with the outdoor dining. And so it had an idea of adobe to some sense without without falling apart and looking like an adobe building. So,
All right, any other comments, Matt? You turn your mic on. We don't want to miss this.
that is drainage. The green areas is drainage.
Right, are those supposed to be ponds? See, that's why I don't.
It's not meant to be a pond. It was meant to be rain garden. Yeah. So it has
Actually, you
a
got a swale there, it
comfortable-
looks
No.
like, and then you got pipes going.
I mean, I think the detention needs to be about 10% of your total area.
10% normal.
And then we have,
This is less than an acre site. Correct?
Yeah, 1.14 or something like that.
1.14, so it's over an acre.
Yeah.
That gets you into detention requirements. Being over an acre.
well, and you've got about a 10% grade from the upper parking lot to the lower. I'm not really seeing how that's gonna happen.
10%, is that what it is?
Yeah. It's about,
That's too steep.
it's about a 3 or 4 foot drop over 30 feet.
You can't walk that.
Wow, I don't know what happens when your car gets to the top of that ridge.
You can't drive.
I think there's a potential for this entire site to change once you incorporate detention into it and some drainage planning, and it's going to affect your parking lot size and shape and the number of spaces. It might even affect the size of that building.
It's all possible. And so, it may be that it would be to your benefit that we split it up. Because if we tie it all together and then kind of bank it on what staff says and what you have to do in response to that, then the whole thing has to come back. If we split it up and say the building's fine, brick's fine, go with a darker mortar, and we'll see it'll be a fast meeting if the site has to come back. Or we could possibly look at it like, if the site is unchanged, if they go underground or something like that, if the site's unchanged, then it's a conditional approval. I don't know.
I think if you worded it properly, I think we could work with that. If there are no major changes to the physical layout of this site with the addition of, adequate detention for the property to meet the minimum standards as for the town of Somerville, then you could give that approval as a condition. I just don't know if we want to leave it hanging out there like that. It kind of leaves it very up in the air.
Sure.
Why don't we just leave it up to staff?
We don't know that.
It's ugly change.
Huh?
I think it's ugly change.
The engineers are saying it could
Not
totally
90
change.
extra parking spots.
Right. Like if you gave up those 8 or 10 spots in the middle, you could create a pond there.
Yeah.
Or you may say, no, I want them right in the middle. I'll put them on the right side or the left side. But if you have extra spots, you can create a pond if you need it.
Well, you're looking about 4,000 or 5,000 square foot. You'd have to find for detention.
Mhm.
You got enough room on that right side to play with. And
Yep.
screw up your landscape. You could almost get it out of that. Was pervious.
Yeah, if you put something under it. I just think that you're going to find it. I think they'll find a solution that doesn't impact the building placement or the primary landscape. And it shouldn't be a big deal. I mean, you have architectural approval. The architectural approval is based on where the building is on the site.
Right.
And if you have a little less parking and a little more pond, I don't see that as really being a concern for us.
All right. Well, then, are we all fine with the architecture the way it is? Okay. All right. Anything else you'd like to add? I know you don't want to come back. I get it.
Yeah,
Nobody
think-
likes doing this. But
You come back next week,
Sure.
once each week, come down and visit you guys.
that would certainly make a different point.
I come down from Greenville.
Oh, you do? Okay. Well, we're just trying to avoid rubber stamping something that we don't know what it's going to look like. But a carefully worded motion would go a long way.
Okay, you're gonna make that carefully worded?
I
motion?
can. Someone have a carefully worded motion that they would like to make?
I make a motion that we approve the architecture, the screening for the dumpster and the HVAC units. The additional landscaping in the back to screen the building. And if the site changes dramatically, geometrically, then it'd be up to the town engineer to have come back to us. Because the town engineer is going to get a permit, town engineer is going to have to approve the site plan, civil plan. So if it site geometrically changes, then it'll come back to us, change it drastically.
Yep, and we're approving the brick sample while we're at it.
Right.
Yep.
What is the name of that brick?
Cork. I'm just joking. Yeah, Palomino wire cut.
Yeah.
Meridian brick.
Yeah.
And be careful with the mortar.
I didn't even see his brick from behind. He held it up like this, and I didn't see it.
Oh, gotcha. We. Good point. All right, so we have a motion on the table with comments and then a small contingency on the site if it dramatically changes in the opinion of town staff. All right. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a second. Any further discussion? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? 1, 2 opposed. All right, motion carries 3-2. And if it changes on the site, then we'll see you again. All right, so ignoring that, all of that. Oh, is there anyone here that is pressed for time based on flights? And all right. Would anyone have an objection to moving Tommy's Car Wash up to the next? Just based on, want to respect everybody's time. Flights are immovable generally.
If we have a motion and a second and approved to amend the agenda, we can do that.
All right, anyone like to make a motion to amend the agenda to move Tommy's Car Wash up to the next item?
Motion so made.
Okay, we have a motion. You have a second?
Second.
You have a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right. Well, I apologize to everyone here for the time, but we're gonna go ahead and move Tommy's up so that gentleman can catch his flight. You got approval. You got approval on the architecture and.
He's here for one more project.
All right, so you're good to go unless something dramatically changes with the site, which.
He's here for the next.
I understand.
Yeah.
You know, Tommy,
No, he's here for the Boone Hill Road
okay.
project.
We will get right back to it as soon as we can. All right.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Audie. I'm with Bowman, representing the civil engineer for this project. This is a new Tommy's Car Wash location. It's located at North Main and Rackaway. It is the old First Citizens Bank that is currently vacant. This site has 4 existing driveways, one on North Main at the taper of the right turn lane. It also has a driveway off of Rackaway, and then 2 other existing driveways that are on the interior drive aisle. Our intent for this site is to abandon the North Main driveway and the Rackaway driveway, and then keep the 2 existing driveways on the interior drive. It is a 2 pay lane car wash, 80 feet. And the first entrance, there it is, will be an entrance only going into the 2 pay lanes. That holds up to 22 cars stacking. We did provide a stacking exhibit for that. That includes 3 cars inside the car wash. The other driveway would be a full access, and that would be for anybody entering for the vacuums or leaving. The landscape buffer has an additional 3 feet added to it on all sides. The 3 extra feet are for the vehicular drive aisles and parking that's required if you have any of those on any sides of your property, which we do on all 4. So we've increased that buffer to 8 feet instead of the standard 5. We do have a landscaping plan that we've included with this. We also have a photometrics plan. We have a signage plan, and then a building plan, which is similar to what you saw on Old Trolley Road, and Ed Gilmore is here to present those to you.
Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for changing the time. Ed Gilmore again, partner with Olympus Pines and head of our construction. As Jen gave you the layout of the car wash, it's a right in. We hold 20-some cars. Actually sat there for a while monitoring the cars at the intersection, which the left in coming from 26 averages about 13 cars per light section, 4 coming straight across. And then over the hour there, or the last hour, and this was at lunchtime, was 21 cars over the entire hour. So clearly we can deal the stacking there. We did mimic this is a smaller building, this is an 80-foot building, but we did mimic squaring off the building as we did the last one, doing the same brick. Everything is the same. And then as Jen said, we do have a landscape plan to show all the landscape. So we're hoping not only to do the concept, but do final approval with conditions if need be.
I added it and I can't find it. It's not going to help. I can't get it. This is not on the network. Must have grabbed an old version. They do have a landscape plan that was sent over. I had added it to the packet and it's not here. Okay.
You can go ahead with the staff comments on it then.
I did not have, I got it yesterday. I didn't have a full chance to really look at it. If you look at the site plan, you know, they have the 8-foot landscape border, which meets the requirement, you know, for all drive aisles and parking, et cetera. So they've got that. Like I said, I did not have time to do a full evaluation of it, and unfortunately.
Pull it up on my computer if you want to see it. We have the 3 existing oaks that are out there. They're on the plan west side. We've also added a number of trees to the site. First count staff comments in the top plan northeast corner. We've kept low-lying shrubs there, so there's no visibility. That is also where we're placing the sign. there's azaleas out there. There are some palms out there. Did do some sod also, but we did keep in mind the landscaping that's like from the other Old Common Road, but I don't think pull it up for you.
Y'all wanted to do that? You want to see the landscaping?
And we were hoping for preliminary final, but
I think I'm good with the site. Anything you do is better than what's there now. And the fact that you're reducing the number of access points, I'm all in favor of it. And the landscaping will be that much better, but
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one. I hate to admit how often I go to Walmart and Home Depot. So I'm very familiar with that intersection. And I'm just worried about the stacking. That's really hard to get in either direction you're going at that intersection. That's hard to get through. There's a lot of crossing traffic. Everybody's going in all different directions, and to put a curb cut that close to that intersection with people leaving the parking lot. If you've done a traffic study, I think we need to look at that and get like a traffic
I included everything
professional's
that I
opinion,
had.
because from my experience, that's bad now. Even without the bank there, it's still a very challenging. I'm always happy on a Saturday if I get through there without an accident. It's just, I don't know if you drive that, but that's a tough part of that development.
Yes, we do have a traffic study with AJ leaving, and it was delayed slightly, and then we were kind of waiting to get through this meeting, but we're ready to move forward. He's given us some time. And AJ and I did discuss that, and he was fine with those two drivers. The only thing that may come up in the recommendation is that the full access would go to a right out, but that would still not be hardship, I don't think, because we can just go to the signalized lights. So we just show full access right now until recommendations come out on the together.
Well, you're gonna be able to stack 21 cars.
22 if you count the 3 in the.
So that's not gonna be an issue.
Right.
The single entrance.
Correct. That's why I sat there today for quite a while at lunchtime, because again, every single car that came in there was below what we can hold. And
But-
every single one of those cars
But
would have to turn.
it's different on the weekends. And people are gonna go wash their car on the weekend. And the stack is great once you're on your property. My concern is if you're going from left to right and you're trying to turn left and people are coming at you from the other direction, which they do, there's a flow from that BJ's and the hotels that are going across towards the Lowe's direction and Starbucks, that the cars are gonna not back up on your site, but they're gonna back up in that west or left to right. And if you're trying to get out of that thing and you're waiting to turn for people to turn into the car wash, I think that's where the problem is. I think this is going to make that clog much worse. Now, if we have the traffic report and they say, no, we've looked at all this and you're only gonna wait another, 5 seconds longer, that's fine. But again, I'm just going out and I'm not a traffic engineer, but I spend way too much time over there and I just don't
You're
feel.
gonna have to have a traffic report to get a permit. It's already been stated.
That's right. But if we give approval, what happens if we approve it?
You still have to have the traffic report approved by staff. So we're not here to judge traffic. It's not our.
No, we're here,
program.
but we do evaluate site plans.
Yeah, that's. Let the traffic report go and the staff will
It's kind of the same as what we were dealing with the Chick-fil-A in a way.
Yeah.
But that one we said no to.
Correct. And then they did it. True. All right. Matt? Anything else you'd like to? Art? Okay. Well, the building, I mean, the building's the same as the other one, so
And are there any differences between this and the one we approved?
it's shorter, right? I mean,
That's it. It's shorter, but it's squared off the exact same way.
Squared off.
All the layouts the exact same.
Same brick or different?
Same brick.
Same brick. Does that make sense to use the same brick?
corporately,
It's
it
spin
does.
glass, which brick that we're using, which is a brick that's been commonly used in this
Mhm.
market.
Okay, well, if we've approved the design,
I still like the side or the back, I guess what's labeled the back elevation. I still like it better than the front. But last time we were like, if you just rotate it like it's a very interesting side elevation. But anyway, I think the site works if the traffic will work. In some respects, it puts us back kind of in the same place we were with the other project. And that if the traffic study doesn't work, shows deficiencies or issues, then that are going to affect the site plan, then they really need to be back.
Well, and just to reiterate, the original request is for preliminary. They've asked for final on top of it. You don't have to do that. You could still have your concerns with the site and the traffic and pending outstanding issues, and you can give preliminary with comments noted and wait for the TIA to come back, or it is up to you. If there's still concerns with the overall site and layout and how it's going to work, we don't have to grant final at this time.
That's it. Yeah, there's actually, and if the site didn't change as a result of the traffic study, it would be a short presentation. Ed might even be able to stay home. But
When I talked to AJ about the traffic, he didn't see any issues with the traffic other than possibly changing that. Right now.
okay. All right, well, as Tim said, they originally requested preliminary approval, but if all is well, if someone would like to make a motion to the increasing that, then welcome to do that. But first, I just want to say, any other discussion? All right, would someone like to make a motion?
Let's make a motion to go ahead and grant final approval of that full movement entrance being changed to right in, right out only. And final approval from engineering for the traffic study.
So the motion's for final approval with right in, right out, and the site ultimately contingent on traffic study. Okay. Anyone like to second that? All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Art? All right, motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. All right, 4-1, man. All right, motion carries. So if the traffic study affects the site, then we'll see you back for a short visit probably, but probably okay. All right. Thank you.
for changing.
Oh, we did it again, but the sign was part of this too, wasn't it? But the sign's the same as the other one.
Yeah, they were just showing what was previously approved, what was discussed. There's no electronic message center.
On the corner. Yeah.
It's on
big
the
one.
northeast corner, planned northeast.
Here.
and the big sign on Rockaway, that's like
It's in the median there, yeah.
And this site sits down in a bowl a little bit. There's a little bit of slope.
Technically, we just approved the sign, so. Have a good one.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay.
Change the appearance of cars.
Yeah, they have. All right, we're back to old business, number 3, 1231 to 1235 Boone Hill Road. The parking lot addition. Apologize for the delay.
If I find it, I'll let you know.
I'd like to hear the staff comments before we jump in.
So this is a request for final approval of proposed parking lot addition in the front yard. Property zone GB. This was previously before the board back in 2021. What they've decided to do is take the facade improvements out of the proposal and is just the parking lot. The UDO does require that parking between the front of the building and the street be approved by the DRB. So that's detailed here in that. The applicant is proposing a permeable paver parking lot in the front and a tree removal permit and tree protection board will be required. All materials should meet the minimum plant size requirements of the UDO. So here we go. This is the overall plan. They have the lake landscape buffer that's required for the new parking. It's pretty straightforward, actually.
All right. Back to you, Tim.
Okay, I am Tim Hazelbaker, the architect for this. I work for Live Oak Consultants. And what we are proposing is to use the existing grade. These buildings were set back quite a ways in earlier times. So they didn't work with a frontage setback and then parking in the rear. They just kind of plopped the buildings in the middle of the property. And so there isn't really enough room to develop parking in the back. So it kind of splits the property. We worked with the Bonnie, and as was mentioned, that easement that's shown hatched up above is an actual legal easement, but these owners do not own the car wash property, which is A1, Lot A, but the easement still exists. And so in order to provide pavement and storm drainage, you'd have to rebuild the detention pond, which is the larger rectangle. And what happens is it falls off into the woods and would take quite a bit of construction. I think wisely they chose to just work with the existing grade with the allowance that is allowed in planning and zoning for permeable parking. And we've stayed 8 feet away from the property lines. Even though the landscaping shows everything across the frontage, there is heavily developed plantings on both the east and the west sides, on the outer, on the east side of the left property, on the other side of the right hand property. So there's fully developed landscaping existing that acts as a buffer on those two sides. The planting that was chosen is some palm trees, palms that stay low and spread. There's quite a bit of pine tree overbearing along the whole front street area, which don't show up in this We're just showing proposed landscaping, except for the black dots that are the, the calipers of the pine trees, but those are fully mature pine trees. There's 3 trees that are proposed to be taken down. And we've gotten the arborist to approve those. You can see them with an X through them, all on the left-hand parking area. The paved alley that goes between and splits on the property line in the center will stay remaining at the same grade, untouched. Now, there was a problem. Originally, we wanted to do great things and align the 2 sidewalks in front of the 2 buildings, even though they are 2 feet off center. But if using the minimal parking distance for the parking space and the traffic area would put the right-hand parking too deep into the roots of the mature trees. If you kind of pulled it forward, you're getting into heavy grading on the right-hand property there. So I made the suggestion that you're gonna have to give up the pavement or the walkway and go ahead and align it anyway. But that's not an architectural wish. It was just trying to stay away from the roots of the mature trees forward. And so he's agreed to build a new sidewalk across the front of the right-hand property. And of course, as the property gets developed, we would allow for all accessibility ramps and alignments, even though it's a surface type of paving plan. The existing sidewalk dead center on the right-hand property starts off from the street, and but you would still have to account for grade changes until you hit the pavement or the sidewalk at the building. So ramping will be accounted for, but the heavier showing the new grading is pretty well representative of the existing grading anyway. It's we show spot elevations of a survey that was done, and we're not digging deep at all. We're just laying the pavers. Of course, you have to cut them in, and material has to be removed. And then if you want to look at the section above on the detail, or is it the next sheet? Is it, or yeah, up above? That shows what's intended. You have to cut it down, put in some base grade, and put a steel retaining edge, and then embed the permeable pavers. Still a lot of work, but it satisfies the need for permeability and storm drainage, and actually creates kind of a nice ambience for these people.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. Any comments?
I had a couple of questions on that. If you could go back to the plan. The space line dividers, are you going to paint those, or are you going to use a contrasting paver color?
I'm sorry, try that again.
So the lines, the stripes that
Oh,
divide the
no,
parking?
those are painted on stripes after the fact.
Yeah.
They have to be set in, do they?
Well, I've seen them done both ways. And when you see them where it's a contrasting paver, it's really awesome.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh.
And I don't know, it's not that much more. You still have
No,
pavers, right?
It's still saw cutting and cutting up with a brick, and I suppose it can be done.
Yeah. Just a suggestion, if you really, because some of these pavers are it almost makes you want to have more parking lots because they look so good.
Yeah.
And the detailing of that can help. And then I'm sure you've looked at the code. It seems odd to have a handicap spot on one lot and not the other if they're two different parcels. I don't think you can do that
It's what's required for the number of parking spaces.
per parcel.
Well,
Yeah,
as you can see, the roadway splits the
right.
property.
So you have two properties. Is it one property? Then why does it say lot B and
One
C?
property, one owner, and he operates it as a,
But why is there a property line running down the middle?
yeah, there is a property line running down through the middle, but
Is there two TMS numbers or one?
I think there's two TMS.
If there's two TMS numbers, you're gonna need to. Or you're gonna get, your guy's gonna get in trouble at some point. But that's for you to think about. If you sell one property and keep the other. And then the existing walkway on the right parcel. That seems like, again, you'd be better off to take it out and
Pardon it, with what?
the walkway on the right,
Yeah.
the right parcel.
Well, that's existing. That's
Right.
where the entrance from the street is.
Right, but it seems like if you're spending all this money, the incremental cost to replace that and also do it with pavers, maybe of a contrasting color, would be something I would.
Well, he does. I mean, you guys threw us out last time because we were too progressive. And
Oh, well, I wasn't here, so.
on the elevation changes. So we're backing off as much as we can and
All
trying
right,
to.
well,
hold the-
just a suggestion.
Yeah,
And I don't take it personally if they go unheated. And then the dead end parking, how do you get out once you're in? So I can imagine getting in, but how do you get out if you're at that end?
you just have to
Parking
back
spot.
into the relief parts of the parking. And it's wide enough to the standards of a two lane traffic.
So there's enough room to pull out of that last
Yeah.
space and back up
Yes.
with a big ass, with a large truck that we all drive?
It meets standard parking lot dimension.
You can do
Yes.
that, as long as you can get out.
He's already done that.
Okay, all right, that's fine.
Yeah, it meets all parking lot standards.
Okay. It's tight, but if you can do it, you can do it. I think it's a nice project.
Well,
You have a sample of the paper?
again, typically what a person does is back to the far corner of that two-way traffic lane. And then use the rest of the two-way.
Yeah, it's
traffic
22
lane to straighten
feet.
Yourself out.
Do you have a sample of the paver?
Pardon?
Do you have a sample of the paver that you're gonna use?
No, I don't. They're Belden brick is all I know.
Mhm.
May want to get a sample to the town.
Can you match the brick from your other project?
Man, tell you what, already misrepresented what happened at the
Well,
last
you
meeting.
know, what's really funny is I did use the exact same brick color when we were doing the facades. But it was going to be a painted facade. These are old existing buildings.
Yeah.
And I suggested a light tone.
All right.
Well, we don't need to reject that.
Yep.
Comments?
What size is that oak tree coming out the bottom left?
Yeah, that's been approved by the.
I understand. What size is it though?
It's actually not as big as I think it shows. It's what the arborist commented on.
Trying to scroll down to see it. Hold
Yeah,
on.
keep going down. Down to
Computers.
the very bottom.
I,
Oh.
the computer is not wanting to,
There's
it looks like it's a 10
It's
inch.
a 10 inch. But it's a crooked 10 inch. It's not a handsome tree.
Okay. All right, anyone else? Okay, anyone like to make a motion? He's
Oh,
requesting.
just a comment. The theme of the landscaping is barberry red and another plant. And I forgot what I've got it labeled at, which is also a red leafed seasonal plant. So it's red prickly with palms in the background is the landscape theme.
All right. Any of that indigenous to Somerville?
Pardon?
Any of that indigenous to Somerville? No, the palms may not be.
Yeah, no, I think the palms are certainly. And the other are a questionable plant, and I read about it, and it suffers a little bit with
Okay.
health issues. But
And
it's-
a lot of the imports to Somerville are as good or better than the original.
Crepe myrtles is import.
yeah, I mean, if you read about it, it says I shouldn't choose it, but it's there's quite a few varieties of that plant. So whatever Somerville has in stock.
This is one with the red tip for Tina.
Yeah, it is.
They're dying. They died all.
Yeah, that's kind of, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah,
Right, and-
flat out, red tips all died.
Yeah, yeah.
So since Chris Campo is not here, he's not a big fan of palmetto. So are we overdoing it with palmettos?
Well,
or
what's
they?
going on with, again, you got overstory with these pine trees and a
Mhm.
lot of root
Mhm.
coverage. And so I felt that that would be like an indigenous palmetto forest where the palms find their way in amongst the root systems.
So the short palmettos or the?
Yeah, these are
The short, okay,
spreading-
that's fine.
short spreading
Yep,
ones.
yep, the scrub type. Yep, yep.
Yeah.
All right. If we don't have any other comments, would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion for final approval.
Okay. Second. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's see. My sheet here looks like a bingo card, but I believe we're on number 3 for new business, Main Road self-storage. As you're coming forward.
John's Island.
Well, we'll find out, but Tim, you have staff comments?
Yeah, I do. I just have to get there. Seaman and Whiteside tend to give lots and lots of stuff.
I'll just go ahead and introduce myself. I'm Andy Bujoski with Barrier Island Engineering. And to answer your question, yes, Main Road self-storage started on Johns Island. So that's where the original location is. And there's some other ones around now. There's actually one on Dorchester Road up here close. It's in Dorchester County already.
All right, so the third item under new business is an application for conceptual review of a proposed new self-storage facility on Paradise Point. The property zone GB was recently annexed. This is on the south side of Paradise Point, just west of Bacon's Bridge Road. The site's currently partially wooded and was recently annexed. A tree survey has been provided, but a tree removal permit is still required. I know the town arborist has looked at the site, and I know that there's one tree that was only one that they're preserving, so it should be pretty straightforward for that. The building has a 28,700 square foot footprint and is proposed to be 4 stories tall with an overall height of 55 feet. This is within what's permitted in GB. The building does, the proposed layout meets the required buffer depth on all sides, requiring a buffer. A grading plan, utility plan, landscape plan, lighting plan, signage plan have not been submitted. The building is proposed to have a metal panel metal panel cladding and a brick veneer for the central main entrance. The design should be consistent with Chapter 4, Section 4.5 of the UDO. And I'll turn that over and.
All right.
So this property is on Paradise Point. It is right behind there's a existing kind of office and retail building that fronts Bacon's Bridge on the corner there. This is the wooded parcel behind it. It is excessively overgrown and dense right now. The primary trees out there are pines, none of which are in particularly good or beautiful shape. There's one tree on the bottom left of the site plan. It is called on the survey as an oak, but I believe it's mislabeled. It's actually a sycamore, I believe, from what the arborist looked at. But either way, we're proposing to save that tree. That's about the only good tree on site that is worthy of being saved. And that's a combination of meeting with the developer's arborist and with Mr. Salisbury. Addressing the buffers, I think actually based on our meeting last week, on the north side of the property where we're calling out the 5-foot buffer, there was a comment about that changing to an 8-foot buffer for vehicular use area.
Yeah, that should be.
So that's actually going to be increased to 8 feet.
You're correct. That should be 8 feet for the driveway buffer.
Yeah. And then I guess of particularly interest for this property, on this site plan, you can see there's a drainage easement coming from the south, kind of at the southeast, plan southeast, and then through a little wetland area through the site. So south to north is the natural drainage pattern here. I believe they have underground detention on this site to the south, and it is eroding significantly where it outfalls onto this property. So there's definitely going to have to be some grading within that 5-foot buffer on the south side to repair some of the damage there. Their parking lot's being undercut right now. So we'll be looking at picking up that drainage and taking it plan east we'll route that part through our pond on the front side. I know that pond looks very small, and it is. Our intent here is to utilize some low impact and or some infiltration trench, potentially some level of underground through the drive aisle area. And then we'll be outfalling to the north where it goes now. There's an existing culvert that goes under that property to the north entirely, and then to the pond back in Paradise Point. There is going to be, there's no other use here for the building. It's just self-storage, and then there'll be a very small office component, for leasing of units. So that'll be kind of in that top right corner of the building. So we're looking to keep the parking in the front. I know that's not typically desired anymore, but I think that's the most logical place to put it on this site to access the office, at least for ADA and for customers. There's some parking in the back. There's actually kind of two versions here that we're looking at. If you this version that has the photo locations called out on it is an old version that had parking in the rear. And this is likely what we're going to revert back to based on some of the comments from staff for some additional parking for the office space. But if you could flip to the next. So this was the most recent plan. You can see at the back, there was kind of a loading dock area. This is likely going to get shrunk to put the parking back there as well. So we'll probably have 2 to 3 spaces back there, as well as that loading dock area. I think that's about it. The Y-shaped turnaround is for fire. That's to meet the requirements for fire turnaround. Again, this is kind of conceptual. Obviously, we're here for conceptual review. So from a site standpoint, looking for any comments that y'all have so far.
Oh, now we're getting there. We're having trouble seeing the building on that plan.
Do you want? Is this better?
That would be a little helpful.
Yeah, it's not. According to the wetland consultant, it's not actually wetland. It's some sort of wet feature. I'm not sure how he's defining that, but if it ends up requiring a fill permit, then yes. No, he hasn't. He hasn't said it's isolated or jurisdictional or non-jurisdictional yet. So, and really, it's. I mean, if you go out there and look at it, it's not really a wetland feature. It's where there's stormwaters. There's an outlet structure, and it just dumps onto the property and drains across. So it's honestly, it's kind of a major ordeal that we're going to have to deal with on their stormwater side.
So where is the parking on here? I see parking up front, the 3 spaces.
Yeah.
It's a 28,000 square foot building. It's all internal, like, inside access storage.
It is. It's all inside units, inside access.
Okay.
So nobody works there?
There's likely going to be one employee that works the office, which I think is part of the intent from staff comments that I think in the UDO, there's actually no parking requirement for self-storage. But then I think the office part was.
Yeah, they need to accommodate the total square footage for the office. Our concern is that, you know, if people are coming in, I don't believe that they can pull into here. They're going to have to offload their stuff somewhere. And that's why we're asking for a couple additional spaces. These don't generate a huge amount of traffic. Usually they're at the most, there's the employee and maybe 1 or 2 people on site at any one time at any one day. So just a couple extra spaces in the rear to accommodate people loading or unloading was kind of our request to get some in the back here. So as Andrew indicated earlier, that first plan up here shows another 3 spaces in the back. That's probably what they're going to go with the loading dock as well. So we're happy to hear that.
And I think calling it a loading dock may be somewhat of a misnomer from all the other buildings of this nature that Main Road has. They're all, you know, at grade, like a loading zone rather than a dock per se.
We'll start with some site comments. Now you're requesting conceptual review, so we're not going to vote on anything, but
It's like there's is there a lot of relief on this property? A lot of drainage from back to front or slope from back to front? can't read
There
those
is a
topo
decent bit
lines.
of relief across the property. That southern property or plan south here, I mean, that's like a 4 to 5 foot steep bank.
Okay.
So there's probably going to be some level of retaining wall along that buffer on the south side of the building in order to make that grade.
And I see about 8 contour lines crossing the building, although I can't read the numbers. So.
Yeah, there's probably going to be a wall along the south side buffer.
Okay, so you're cutting the property down, or are you matching the high end or the low end of the property for the building?
We'll try to be somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
Yeah, we're certainly going to try to balance this thing as much as possible. You know, it's not really feasible to fill, 6 feet at the northeast end or cut, 6 feet on the southwest end. So.
Yeah, I don't think your detention's gonna be big enough.
Yeah, and that's what we'll do some level of,
You can mitigate the,
drive aisle.
you can mitigate the driveway, but you can't mitigate that roof.
But you can supply underground detention in that drive aisle area. Whether it's chambers or infiltration trenches or whatnot, we're still,
Okay.
we need a volume for that, but that's the intent here.
Art?
I'm okay. I'm good.
Just a weird sight.
It's very
It's
strange.
easier to find.
Wish there was more undeveloped around there, but there's building out conceptual elevations here.
Yeah, we'll talk about the building in a second. Site. Okay, you want to go ahead and discuss the building?
Do we, I mean, I guess before we move to the building, are there any specific comments in the negative towards having parking in front of the building here? I mean, if this is something that, I want to kind of get some feedback on that specifically before we go through a site design and that gets dropped, in our
I don't think the issue
60% set of plan.
Yeah, I don't think the issue is going to be the 3 parking spaces in the front.
You just approved 24 parking spots in front of the building. That's fine.
I think you'll have maybe bigger issues with taking up so much of the site with this building. So anyway, we can address the building.
Okay. Elevations here from all sides are provided. These two are see, it's kind of hard to tell. The windows side, looking at the site plan, is the portion of the building that's fronting the pond in Paradise Point. And then you can see that kind of the just to the right of the windows, that's kind of that front corner. And that rest of that side with no windows across it is along the drive aisle on the north side. So it's kind of like not truly a north elevation, I guess, as it's labeled, but kind of both sides. And then same for the south side.
So brick at the front and then the rest is metal.
Yeah, so there'll be the brick facade up front and then steel, the rest of it.
Okay. And do you have 2 more elevations? Okay, well, I think the buildings are pretty self-explanatory. I mean, there's not a lot of detail to it. I would have trouble at any stage of this, and I know conceptually we're just giving comments. That whether this was preliminary or final, I would have a lot of trouble approving it. It's just, I get that it's a storage facility, but it's just really, really unattractive. So that's my comment.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, for self-storage, for what it is.
They look pretty good. I think I would go to school on those.
I should follow up. Just a lot of missing a lot of detail. I think we can't usually just jump into just big masses of metal in Somerville downtown. It's just,
Well, it's more than that.
it's more than that. The massing,
I think the height is a huge issue. Huge issue. And what's the appropriate height for that site based on the view corridors as you're driving down Bacon's Bridge Road? It's massive. And you're going to see it from, I don't know, I mean, it'd be a good thing to come in, you know, when does this thing come into view? And it's just enormous.
I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of this from Bacon's Bridge as you think you are.
But let's,
Because the building in front of it is at least 10 feet above the elevation of this site. And it is at minimum 2 stories, maybe 3.
Yeah, but
can't
Bacon's
remember
Bridge,
offhand. There's a
Bacon's
picture of
Bridge
it.
is curving, right?
So
when you come around that bend at, what's that really nasty blue building that the old Rite Aid? Yeah, when you're coming down, heading towards Trolley Road, I think you're going to see the site coming around the bend. It's huge, but we need some sightline studies. I think doing any kind of bend on a building successfully is incredibly challenging. And you know what I mean by the bend?
yeah, like the non-straight sides.
Yep.
Yeah.
Architecture, that's a huge challenge to make that look right. And it's just, it just seems out of scale. There's a little neighborhood back there. I've never been back there, but you know, those people are going to be looking up and seeing the monument to, shouldn't I just go to Goodwill and get rid of this stuff? But I think we need self-storage to a point, but this just seems like it's just too much. And they built that one about 5 years ago on 61 heading into Charleston and West Ashley across from that Tex-Mex place. And it's just massive. It's just, these things are just too big.
Oh, even Charleston County has,
Too big.
they don't have a design review process, but they do have someone who's reviewing that, and they have guidelines on large mass spaces and breaking up space, and you know, and oftentimes people use paint, which doesn't really work. It's just, yeah, it's just massive.
But I think Bill made a very constructive comment, which when I look at this, I just want to cry. But I think Bill's idea of go around, find good examples of self-storage. There are some. This is a terrible example of self-storage, but there's some good ones. And then see what you can do. But I would leave the board before I even thought about saying a good word about this entire presentation. I just think it's the antithesis of what I'd like to see Somerville grow into, especially Bacon's Bridge, which has tremendous potential to be a great street. You've got the recreational opportunities from the creek, Brant Sawmill, whatever it is. There's some nice neighborhoods that are getting better. They're nice to start with. I think there are new people moving into those. That whole corridor seems to be a really good growth area. And I just don't see this contributing to that at all. It's not.
Okay.
These guys are all going to vote yes, so I'll leave the board.
It's conceptual. Any other comments? Okay. I think it's got a ways to go.
Appreciate y'all.
Awesome.
Make sure the architect gets to attend the next one as well.
Item number 4, new business, Corey Boulevard offices, proposed car wash conversion.
Yes. The applicant is requesting preliminary approval of a proposed car wash conversion to an office / warehouse space. This is zones GB, general business. This is located at the northwest corner of Corey Boulevard and Boone Hill Road. It's currently a self-serve car wash. This is their first meeting. The site is currently a self-serve car wash facility with 6 bays. Existing pavement to be removed and replaced, expanding available parking, existing paving and the right of way to be removed and replaced with sidewalk. Some tree removal, possibly requiring a tree removal permit, is included. Proposed office space to be added on the Corey Boulevard side with existing bays acting as storage space. 7 parking spaces are to be added. An encroachment into the required 30-foot buffer by the parking will require DRB approval. Existing vegetation must be field verified by town staff to meet buffer requirements adjacent to the multifamily residential property. Foundation plantings required per section 8.4.2. 8-foot parking screening is being provided, and the proposed architecture reuses existing metal roof, the addition of hardy siding and a brick veneer water table. Window details must have a header and sill detail per section 4.5.2, and proposed EFS does not exceed the 25% limit. So I will turn it over to the applicant.
Corey Stillings with Live Oak Consultants, one of the civil engineers on the project. So pretty much we're just kind of building off what's already there. As far as the site, we'll be adding parking to the north side. We will be encroaching further into the existing 30-foot buffer, so we would require approval for that. The existing driveway does already encroach into it, but we'll be going a little bit further. On the front side, currently the whole frontage of the property is essentially a driveway. We'll be cutting that back down to just a 24-foot drive into the site. Be adding sidewalk along the front to each of the offices. As far as the building goes, we'll be using the existing structure. The office space is going to be storage containers. They're actually made here locally. They take used containers, decontaminate them, test the structural integrity of them, and then we will be dressing it up. Base will be brick veneer, the siding will be hardy plank, and then as stated, we'll reuse the existing metal roofing. Also like to note the site's less than half an acre. It's only 0.39 acres, so we don't have any detention shown. Currently plan to just sheet flow into the existing roadside ditch on Boone Hill. And utilities will be reusing all the existing utilities currently serving the structure. Yeah, I'll open up to any questions you guys have.
All right. Tim, you want to go to the architectural too? I think there's a rendering too. It probably might.
This better?
It's a choice of words.
Which one do you want?
The rendering is good.
The rendering, okay.
All right. Matt? Site or building?
I think I'm actually okay with the site. I mean, it's an improvement over what's there. Architecturally, I'm not really getting why we're bumping out the entrances instead of just a traditional storefront. Not really grooving on the texture of that.
Kind of tapered off there. Heart, okay, heart.
Same.
Right.
Yeah, I think the site is fine. This just looks weird.
Okay.
I think it's very ingenious, and it's I'm very familiar with the site, and I used to use that car wash for years. It's pretty ingenious and it's a gutsy move.
All right.
I like it all right.
Now, we're looking at preliminary approval here for this.
Yeah, I love the idea of turning this thing into offices. That is a great idea. But that is the worst architectural expression. Are you the architect?
No, sir. I'm the civil engineer.
Okay, well, whoever drew that needs to think about a different career. That is just so terrible. It's just horrible. But don't give up, because it's a great project. And the idea of taking this car wash and transforming it and popping out of that facade, I think is fantastic, but it can't look like that. I'm thinking it should be much more maybe modern, industrial. You know, who you should talk to is Lottie, what's his name? Yeah, what he's doing with that, because as bad looking as this building is, there's that old car dealership on Main Street that he's renovating. It's beautiful. Yeah. And I think if you could kind of get his, that vocabulary that he's doing in there and taking this old junky dump and making it cool again, it'd be awesome. And that would be a perfect site for it. But this is just it's just bad.
Are there any specific?
Okay,
things about it?
the angles I think are a problem. I don't think that's helping you. It's too distracting. I'm not saying no angles, but you've way overdone it. And you may look at pushing and pulling something in and out and not having each one exactly the same. And maybe each one has its own personality. So that's one. The second one is just materials. I think you have an industrial aesthetic established there because it was a car wash and it was inexpensive and straightforward use of materials. Don't try and make it look like somebody's, weekend cabin, which is what these things look like, or somebody's backyard shed. It needs to say, I'm an office building. And this, again, it's all these, I'd rather see those rolling doors is a part of the aesthetic, because at least that speaks to the industrial past of the building. It just looks like you're trying to do wood in residential style windows on something that probably should be more commercial industrial vibe.
Right. Maybe combining the three on each end, but they really, to me, they kind of look like ticket booths from the fair. And that is probably the most positive thing I could say. So I do think maybe unifying those on each end, addressing it more like an industrial type of thing, and not try to do them 6 individually. I would take, the angles, usually if you see an angle like that, you try to make sense out of it, but it doesn't, the reason for it isn't very clear.
Right. So one of the reasons they're angled is because of how close we are to the right of way of Corey Boulevard. If we were to put them straight, we'd be encroaching into the right of way.
Right.
Or otherwise it would have to be pushed back so far into the car wash bays to make those useless.
Right.
So that's the reasoning for the angles.
Gotcha.
See if we can kind of play with that some.
Okay.
But there wasn't a whole lot of room to.
Understood. Yeah, and it's a challenge, and it's creative, but not all things that are creative are great. And so, so I think there's a challenge ahead of GJS, and but yeah, it's just not working. Okay, any other discussion? Requesting preliminary approval. If someone would like to make a motion.
I make a motion we deny,
Okay, is
come back.
there a second?
I second that motion.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any other further discussion?
Next time, please bring.
Architect would be good. No further discussion. With the motion and a second for denial. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, sorry.
That was a neat idea.
I think we're
We have
down
one
to the
more.
last item.
Number 6 on the agenda, 602, it must be you. 602 North Main. As you're coming forward, I'll ask Tim to let us know the staff comments.
The applicant is requesting preliminary and final approval of a proposed addition and site work at 602 North Main Street. Property is zoned UCMX, Urban Corridor Mixed Use. This is currently used as germane dermatology. The following are staff's comments. The site is, the proposal consists of a 1,500 square foot expansion on the south side of the building. This will close the one-way drive around that side of the building. This results in the removal of parking on the main drive to allow for two-way traffic. The dumpster enclosure is moved to allow for better circulation and the addition of a landscaped island next to the row of parking spaces. The applicant has addressed staff comments from pre-application. The proposed addition will match the existing building. Outstanding building code comments will need to be addressed at the time of permitting. So here, this is existing. This is proposed. And I'll turn it over.
Hi, my name is Bobak Bryan, Architect. I apologize, my civil engineer isn't here this evening, but the plan as presented, basically we are taking over the additional driveway on the south of the lot and using that for the proposed 1,500 square foot addition. In removing that driveway, we wanted to clear up any obstructions in the wider two-way driveway. So that's the reasoning behind relocating the dumpster area. And then just delineating the parking spaces much more organizedly. Right now, it's pretty much a free-for-all. I think that little L appendage is undelineated right now. And then in the front, adding a planting area and then relocating the two existing accessible parking spots, but kind of bringing them out to just create a more planted and presentable entrance to the site. That's it for the site. The architectural, there's a proposed elevation there existing on top. Sorry. The addition's on the south. It's that small. Yeah, that's it. We're just adding 8 medical offices to the existing space. So there's a kind of single-story structure with a green metal roof, and then kind of behind it is a 1.5-story faux mansard that is all just painted pine, and that faux mansard is hiding a flat roof with mechanical equipment on it. One of the kind of unfortunate interior conditions in the space is there is very low usable headroom, and Dr. Germain did request that in the addition, we try to maximize and get a little bit better head height so that the patient lights could actually flow through the space a little bit more efficiently. The usable ceiling height is 7'9" or 10, something like that. So that's why the addition kind of is set back with the mimicked roof, but a little bit higher up to just kind of provide a little bit more usable headroom, and then tying in with the existing wood trusses. So trying to really minimize the structural work for this addition as well. This is the side facade, and then that's the rear facade.
And we've gotten to the end.
It's not my best work. I apologize. I wish it was a more exciting building, but
So the top image is extended
correct, correct,
and the bottom image is
correct.
so you're not sure exactly what you're doing. There's some notes on it.
The existing is staying exactly the way it is. All of those notes basically say existing to remain.
And then how far set back the sides?
So not very far at all. The current setback difference is, I believe, 15 feet. We're kind of splitting it. So that preliminary site plan doesn't, it shows it having a bump out. We've actually proposed filling it in. It's a little bit more clear in another drawing. But yeah, it's there.
The rest of it is parallel to the street. I think that piece. I can understand what you said. Space.
Yeah, I made an executive decision when I was putting my packet together. I'm like, how often do we look at the roof plan? Like almost never. So. And I had almost 300 pages worth of packet.
No, I
So
understand.
I'm sorry. Yes, I believe you're right. It was in there.
I believe I understand the concern. The roof plan, which isn't shown here, does address that to some degree where I believe that there isn't an intersection. I wish I could clarify it. I didn't really envision this project envisioning and requiring the cost of a 3D. I'm actually looking for preliminary and final if they would grant it. But, I will take whatever I can get.
Preliminary seems. How does this taller addition tie into the rest of the building? So it looks like maybe it was built in.
Right.
Planned phases, not
Something that's a
complete
little,
intervention because the building's too short.
right. See, I
You
think
can
something
expand
that's,
a little bit on that
something
concern,
that's a
so I'm
little bit.
unclear what you're asking or
We'll go
concerned
back to
with.
that elevation. So you have an existing.
Yep.
Goes back. and Reasonably dies into a. So that's a very simple interest. But
Yeah.
now you're adding something that's tall in the corner of where those two come. And it's not really clear on how.
I really wish that the roof plan made it because I think that would have clarified all of that.
That little three-dimensional drawing.
All right. Any other comments?
Sidewise, no comments.
Okay. Bill.
No comment.
So I don't really. It's a little bit of a challenge to follow everything, but I think there would be some benefit certainly to getting that roof plan in there to kind of see how that corner goes together in particular. But and I know that 3D stuff just takes more time and it's hard to budget that. But as far as communicating it to us, it might be really helpful. So, anyone have a motion?
Make a motion. Preliminary approval with comments made.
Okay, a second. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, we got preliminary. Thanks. All right, I think that we don't have any other miscellaneous or signs. So we got a motion for adjournment. Second. All right. Yeah, that's all.
Hold on.
There's not two of them that look the same.
If you see what these look like.